Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the last wizard, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. The world of Ooh has grown quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from peace, but the stillness that lingers long after a song has ended, when the echoes have faded, and even the memory of melody begins to slip away. The sky above is a soft, violet gray, stretched thin like an old tapestry. The stars are faint, unsure if they still have permission to shine. Beneath that quiet canopy, the last wizard walks alone. His steps leave shallow imprints in the dust, and even those marks seem uncertain, as if the ground no longer remembers what footsteps are supposed to feel like. Once this world pulsed with life. Magic was not a force or a tool, but a language that everything understood. Trees spoke it through their roots, rivers hummed it through their flow, and even the wind carried small murmurs of enchantment. But now those voices are gone. The air feels hollow, as though it has forgotten the taste of wonder. The wizard's robes, once bright with sigils and threads that shimmered with light, now hang heavy with age. They catch the dim light of the setting sun and reflect it weakly, like the memory of a forgotten star. His beard is silver and long, moving gently in the wind that still tries out of habit to be magical. In his hands he carries a crooked staff. It was carved from the wood of a tree that no longer exists, one of the last that once whispered its own name. He stops among the ruins of a small village. The stones are half swallowed by moss and silence. Here and there he can still see traces of life: a melted candle, a cracked teacup, the faded outline of a door once painted in candy colors. The air smells faintly of dust and ash, but beneath it all, something sweet lingers, as if 1,000 memories had been quietly pressed into the walls. The wizard lifts his staff and, with a soft breath, mutters an old word, a simple charm, one that should have made a light appear at the tip. But the staff stays dark. The sound of his voice fades quickly into the stillness, and the silence after feels deeper than before. He tries again, a little louder, a little more hopeful. The syllables tremble, shaped by a tongue that has forgotten the rhythm of power. Still nothing. He lowers the staff slowly, and the faintest sigh escapes his lips. It is not frustration he feels, but sorrow, the gentle kind, like missing an old friend whose face you can no longer picture. Once he could summon lightning from the clouds and weave illusions that danced in the air. He could whisper to stars and receive answers in return. Now, even the smallest trick is beyond him. The world no longer listens, and he wonders if perhaps it is right not to. He walks onward. The ruins stretch like a memory that doesn't want to end. Broken towers lean toward the earth, as though bowing to a silence they cannot escape. Birds no longer sing. Only the occasional rustle of dry leaves moves through the air. There's a strange beauty in it, though a soft dignity in the way the world accepts its stillness. The wizard pauses beside a crumbled wall covered in faint markings. He brushes away the dust, revealing a spell rune, carved by steady hands long ago. The sight of it makes his heart ache, not because it's broken, but because it reminds him that everything once had meaning. Every mark, every gesture, every spark of light was a conversation with the universe. Now the universe has gone quiet, and he is the only one still trying to speak. He whispers almost to himself, "Perhaps it's not gone, just sleeping." The words linger in the air, soft as a breath. Somewhere far away, a faint sound answers a hum, maybe, or the ghost of one. The wizard listens, eyes closed, but it fades before he can be sure. He continues walking, following a faint trail down into what used to be a valley. The land here was once green, filled with strange, glowing plants that hummed with magic. Now only brittle stalks remain, their color drained like old parchment. The wind moves through them gently, making a sound almost like whispers, and for a moment, the wizard imagines they are speaking to him not with words, but with longing. He remembers when he was young, when the sky shimmered with auroras even at noon, and the air tasted of honey and ozone. Magic wasn't something learned, it was felt, breathed, shared. Even the smallest creatures carried it, from the fireflies of the night gardens to the tiny elemental sprites that lived in puddles after rain. But that was ages ago, before the stillness crept in, before time itself began to lose interest in motion. The wizard reaches a crumbled fountain at the heart of the valley. Once this was a place of gathering. He remembers laughter here, the sound of apprentices practicing charms that sent water spiraling into shapes of birds and stars. He kneels beside the fountain, now dry and cracked, and touches the stone. It's cold, but beneath his fingers he imagines he can feel a faint pulse like the echo of something that refuses to die completely. He closes his eyes and speaks a spell of remembrance, one meant not to summon power, but to honor what once was. The words are older than the kingdoms that rose and fell after the great mushroom war. They sound almost like a lullaby. Each syllable carries a small memory, and as he speaks, visions drift around him, flickers of light, faint outlines of faces, a brief echo of laughter that feels both near and impossibly far away. When he opens his eyes, the images fade, leaving only the quiet. Yet he smiles, because for a moment the silence had listened. The wizard rises again, slowly leaning on his staff. His steps feel heavier now, but not from exhaustion, rather, from the weight of memory. He walks toward the horizon, where the last traces of daylight melt into indigo. The air is cool, touched with the first hint of night. Above him, the clouds shift, and for a brief instant, a single star appears dim, trembling, but alive. He stops and looks up. The star seems to flicker in rhythm with his heartbeat, as though recognizing him. He lifts his staff once more, not to command, but to greet. The star does not answer, yet it doesn't fade either. It stays there, quietly shining, a gentle reminder that even when the world forgets magic, magic might still remember the world. The wizard walks on, and the night deepens around him. The ruins behind him fade into shadow, and the land begins to hum again, faintly, almost imperceptibly. Not a return of magic, not yet, but perhaps a breath, the kind a world might take just before dreaming. The wizard keeps walking, following a path that no longer truly exists. Stones crumble beneath his feet, and the old road has been swallowed by roots and time. The moon, pale and distant, hangs above like an old lantern that's forgotten what it means to glow. It casts a light so soft it seems to hesitate before touching the ground. He remembers when the moon had a personality, when it used to whisper to the oceans, calling tides into being. He wonders if it still tries to speak, if somewhere up there the moon goddess still hums to herself, her song lost to the ears of a sleeping world. The thought brings a quiet comfort to him. Perhaps not all things are gone. Perhaps some simply became quieter than memory. He reaches what used to be a field of floating stones, relics, of a time when gravity was more suggestion than rule. Now they lie still, half buried in the earth. The air smells faintly of ozone and old dreams. He sits on one of the larger stones, resting his staff beside him. The surface is cool and smooth, polished by centuries of wind. He gazes into the distance. The horizon shimmers faintly, as if the air there still remembers movement. He thinks about the other wizards, his friends, his rivals, his teachers. They, too, had sought to preserve what was fading. Some built sanctuaries of light, hoping to keep magic alive through pure will. Others tried to bottle spells in crystal jars, capturing fragments of power like insects in amber. But nothing lasted. Magic was never meant to be contained. It was a feeling, not a formula. It existed in the spaces between things, between laughter and breath, between one heartbeat and the next. The wizard had learned this too late. He leans back and closes his eyes. The air hums faintly around him, carrying the scent of dust and rain long gone. In the silence, he hears faint echoes of the past, children laughing in the field, spells being recited in chorus, the sound of wind chimes that once hung from the trees. For a moment, he feels it again, that pulse, that invisible rhythm that once connected everything. And then it's gone. When he opens his eyes, he sees a faint glimmer in the air above his hand, a single mote of light, fragile as breath. He watches it flicker, a remnant of some spell trying to remember itself. Slowly, he raises his palm, and the light lands upon it. It's warm. It pulses weakly, as though recognizing its creator. He whispers to it, "There you are." But the light flickers once, twice, and then fades into nothing. The air around his hand cools. He smiles faintly, sadness and peace blending in his expression. "Thank you," he murmurs to the emptiness. He stands again, picking up his staff. The night wind moves through his hair, cool and dry. As he looks around, he realizes how vast this emptiness has become. Cities once floated in the skies, connected by bridges of shimmering magic. Now only faint outlines remain, shadows against the stars, like ghosts of towers that no longer believe in themselves. The wizard begins walking toward one such shadow. The landscape shifts as he moves, not in form, but in feeling, as though each step takes him deeper into the heart of forgetting. The earth is cracked and pale, scattered with remnants of strange machines, relics of the age when science and sorcery danced together. Wires entwined with vines, glass globes filled with dust. He pauses by a fragment of metal that still hums faintly. It was once part of a power conduit, a living network that carried magic like blood through the veins of ooh. Now it only hums out of habit, unaware that the heart it once served has stopped beating. The wizard presses his palm against it, and for a brief second, it glows soft blue light pulsing under his hand. Then it fades. He wonders how long it's been. Time feels strange now, loose, elastic, without edges. Days blend into nights without distinction, and the stars no longer move. Sometimes he dreams of the sun rising again, golden and alive, spilling warmth across the land. But each morning, the same violet twilight waits for him. He thinks of Simon Petrikov, the man who lost himself to a crown for love. He wonders if Simon's voice was the first echo of magic fading, or perhaps the last. He thinks of Betty, who became something vast and unknowable, giving everything to preserve love beyond time. And he thinks of Marceline, the vampire who lived through every age, carrying memories like lanterns through the dark. He wonders if she too finally grew tired of immortality's loneliness. These thoughts don't bring sorrow, not really. Only a deep, slow understanding that everything that lives must one day sleep, even magic. He continues walking until he reaches a hill that overlooks the remnants of a forest. The trees are bone white, their branches reaching toward the sky like frozen hands. Between them, faint glows shimmer not light, but memory. He descends slowly, in his robes brushing against the brittle grass. The air grows colder. The silence here feels thicker, like water. As he steps into the forest, the faint glows shift. He realizes they are the remains of old spells, enchantments once woven to the bark of the trees, still faintly burning centuries later. He can almost read them. Protection wards, growth charms, weather runes. They're all unraveling now, dissolving like mist. He lays a hand on one of the trees. The surface is smooth, polished by time. Beneath his fingers he feels a tremor, the faintest heartbeat of something that refuses to die. He closes his eyes and listens. For a moment, the air changes. A soft sound rises, a whisper, too faint to be words, too steady to be wind. It flows around him like a forgotten melody, wrapping gently around his thoughts. The wizard breathes deeply, feeling that familiar warmth bloom in his chest, that quiet, ancient sense of belonging. The forest may be fading, but for now, it still remembers. He walks deeper into the pale forest, his staff tapping softly against the roots that cross the ground like resting serpents. The further he goes, the quieter the air becomes, until even the wind seems hesitant to move. There is a strange beauty to this silence, not lifelessness, but a kind of sacred pause, as if the world is holding its breath to remember what it once was. Every few steps, he passes carvings etched into the bark spirals, runes, small symbols left by long-forgotten druids and mages. Some glow faintly, others have dimmed to nothing but scars on the surface. He traces them with his fingertips, feeling the faint hum beneath, like the echo of a dream struggling not to vanish. He begins to speak to the trees softly, almost like an apology. "You were here before us," he murmurs. "You'll be here after. We only borrowed the light for a while." The forest answers not with words, but with the trembling of leaves. The wizard takes that as acknowledgement, perhaps even forgiveness. He continues on, guided by instinct, by memory, or maybe by something deeper that still stirs within the bones of the land. A faint mist begins to rise around him, curling at his feet. It glows faintly blue, carrying with it the scent of moss and starlight. He recognizes it immediately, its residue from the old elemental magic, the kind that once connected every part of Ooh. Even now, when the last flickers of that power should be gone, something remains. It drifts between the trees like ghosts of ancient spells, still performing the motions they were born to do, even without purpose. He watches a swirl of it pass by, moving in a slow circle before fading into the cold air. "You remember, don't you?" he whispers, "even when we don't." The mist seems to linger, as if listening. Then slowly it drifts upward and disappears into the dark canopy. The wizard keeps walking until he reaches a clearing. In the center lies the remains of an ancient tree, massive, hollow, and blackened from within. Once this tree had been a nexus of living power, a conduit through which the world spoke to itself. It was said to be planted by the first mage of Ooh, a being who understood the true language of creation. Now, it stands like a monument to endings. He approaches slowly, laying his hand on the charred bark. Beneath his touch, he feels faint warmth, like the embers of a dying fire that refuses to extinguish completely. He kneels, setting his staff beside him, and closes his eyes. Memories flow through him, not his own, but the forest's. He sees flashes of golden light, laughter under the branches, the hum of magic rising through the soil. He feels the first raindrops that fell after the Great War, the rebirth of the land, the songs of spirits woven to the wind. And then he feels the slow, inevitable fading each century, dimming the glow a little more, until only silence remained. Tears slip down his cheeks, though he doesn't notice. The sorrow is gentle, not crushing like saying goodbye to an old friend who's been ready to rest for a long time. He takes a small wooden charm from his robes, a piece of the old world, carved with care and worn smooth by time. It's a keepsake from his teacher, the last lesson he was ever given. Magic is not about power, it's about remembering. He places the charm at the base of the old tree. "Rest well," he whispers. "You gave us everything." As he stands, a faint light stirs within the hollow. It's barely visible at first, a soft, golden pulse that expands, flickers, then fades again. The wizard watches, breath held. The glow does not return, but he smiles anyway. Even that brief flicker means something still lingers, deep in the roots of the world. He turns back toward the path, and as he walks away, the mist parts to let him through. The forest seems to sigh behind him a slow, contented breath. The night deepens further. The horizon has taken on a faint crimson hue, the last remnant of sunset that never truly ends. In this perpetual twilight, the world seems suspended between waking and dream. The wizard feels it too, that sense of almost being real, yet slightly out of reach. He hums to himself as he walks, an old tune from his apprentice days. The melody is uneven and cracked, but soft enough to merge with the quiet around him. As the sound drifts, something stirs in the distance, a faint shimmer in the air, like rippling heat. He pauses, squinting. The shape resolves into a small figure, not human, not entirely physical either. It's a remnant spirit, one of the last of the ambient entities that once fed on emotion and sound. It hovers near him, translucent and pale, its eyes two gentle pinpricks of blue light. It watches him curiously, head tilted. The wizard lowers his staff, smiling. "Hello, little one. I didn't think there were any of you left." The spirit tilts its head again and circles him slowly, leaving faint trails of light in the air. It makes a sound faint, like a sigh mixed with laughter. He laughs softly in return. "Do you remember me?" he asks, though he knows it can't answer in words. The spirit drifts closer, brushing past his shoulder like a breeze. For a moment, warmth floods through him, familiar, comforting. It reminds him of the days when spirits filled every corner of O, unseen but always near, feeding on joy, curiosity, and song. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the spirit begins to fade. Its glow dims, its form scattering like dandelion seeds caught in the air. He watches until there's nothing left. The space feels colder now, but his heart is lighter. To see even one fragment of that old life still moving through the world that was enough. He continues through the clearing and back onto the trail. Above him, the first hints of morning color the horizon, though the sun never truly rises anymore. The light is strange pink and silver, painted across clouds that seem carved from glass. He stops once more, turning to look back at the forest. From this distance, it almost looks alive again, shimmering slightly under the half-light, as though pretending for just a moment that it remembers how to dream. The wizard smiles faintly and whispers, "Keep pretending. It suits you, eh?" Then he turns toward the east, where the ruins of old kingdoms wait beneath the horizon. The world is empty. Yes, but not hopeless. There are still whispers, still flickers, still pieces of what once was. And perhaps, if he listens long enough, he might find where the last breath of magic still hides, waiting to be remembered. The land beyond the forest opens wide, rolling out before the wizard, like a vast, colorless ocean of stone and ash. Once this was a plain of wonders, a place where the grass sang softly beneath moonlight, and the rivers carried liquid light. Now it lies barren, its surface cracked like old parchment. Yet even here there is a strange serenity. The air feels ancient, emptied of purpose but filled with memory. He walks slowly, his robes whispering against the dust. The horizon wavers, a trembling mirage of half-forgotten cities. He can almost make out the shape of towers that once reached into the clouds, the remains of the wizard kingdom's outer walls. He remembers their glow, their laughter, the echo of spells traded in the open air. Each step brings a faint echo beneath his boots. The ground here holds the ghosts of voices, hundreds, maybe thousands, murmuring in tones too soft to understand. They aren't restless, they're remembering. He closes his eyes and listens. The sound is almost like the hush of a library at midnight, where even silence has a story to tell. He reaches a ridge where fragments of crystal poke through the dirt remnants of shattered focus stones once used by the great mages of old. They glint weakly in the dying light. He kneels, brushing one clean. The surface catches the dim glow of the horizon, refracting it into a faint rainbow. The sight draws a fragile smile from him. This is where it began, he murmurs, and where it ended. He pockets the crystal gently, not as a relic of power, but as a reminder that even broken things can still hold beauty. Further ahead, the ruins rise taller pillars leaning against the twilight sky, their tops lost in haze. The wind here carries the faintest hum of old enchantments, like the low sigh of something too tired to wake. The wizard moves carefully among the stones, tracing the carving as he passes. He recognizes them spells of protection, memory, and balance. They were meant to preserve the heart of magic itself. He reaches what was once the central square of the wizard city. The fountain at its center is frozen mid-motion, water turned to solid glass centuries ago. He stands before it, his reflection bending across the still surface. For a moment, he hardly recognizes himself, a shadow of what he once was, draped in the robes of a vanished age. He touches the glass water and watches faint ripples spread across it, though it shouldn't move. The illusion of life persists, even when the source is gone. He whispers softly, "You're still trying, aren't you? Still pretending there's someone left to care." A small gust of wind answers, carrying dust in lazy spirals. It moves through the square like a forgotten melody, brushing against the pillars, sighing between the cracks. The wizard lets it pass through him. It feels like an embrace, one last gesture from a world unwilling to let him feel alone. He sits on the edge of the fountain, setting his staff beside him. His hands are trembling now, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of memory pressing against him. Every stone, every shadow around him feels alive with echoes. He can almost hear the laughter of apprentices running through the halls, the clash of spells, the rustle of parchment, as lessons were shared under lantern light. He closes his eyes, and for a fleeting moment the world breathes again. The air grows warm. The scent of old ink and candle smoke fills his lungs. He hears voices, clear, bright, alive. The city hums with energy, colors spilling across every wall. He sees faces familiar, beloved people who once stood beside him. He sees himself among them, younger, laughing, careless, his eyes bright with wonder. Then the warmth fades and the vision dissolves. The air cools once more and silence returns. He exhales slowly, tears tracing the corners of his beard. "It's all right," he says softly. "Dreams aren't meant to stay." He rises again and retrieves his staff. Its surface is cracked now, the runes that once burned along it, long extinguished. But it still feels alive in his hand, faintly pulsing, as if sharing his heartbeat. He begins walking toward the city's edge, where the ruins drop into a vast expanse of shadow. From here, the world stretches endlessly, curling into mists that swallow the horizon. Somewhere beyond that fog, oceans still sleep, and mountains crumble beneath their own forgotten names. As he walks, he notices a faint shimmer on the ground ahead, a circle of faint blue light, pulsing weakly beneath the dust. He kneels beside it. The markings are old, one of the first sigils ever cast to anchor magic to the world. He places his palm over it and feels warmth spreading up his arm. For the first time in years, something responds. The light flickers brighter, fragile, but insistent. The wizard closes his eyes, whispering not a command, but a greeting. "Hello again." The sigil hums, a low note that resonates through the air. He feels it travel through the earth, through the stones, through the very air, reaching outward, searching. For a brief moment, he senses movement far away. The flutter of forgotten spells, the faint stirrings of sleeping spirits. It's not a revival. It's a remembrance, the world recognizing a piece of itself it thought it had lost. The hum fades slowly, leaving the wizard trembling with quiet awe. The light beneath his hand dims, then goes out completely, but he can still feel it, pulsing faintly in the soil, waiting for something more. He rises, looking across the endless plain. The horizon glows softly now, not bright but alive, touched with a faint warmth that wasn't there before. He smiles. It's enough. As he continues walking, the faintest sound follows him, not footsteps, not wind, but a rhythm. The heartbeat of a sleeping world. Slow, deep, patient. He realizes then that the silence of ooh is not death. It's the deep inhale before a dream begins again. He looks up one last time at the dim sky where stars blink shyly through layers of mist. They seem closer now, watching. The wizard nods gently as if to say, I understand. Then he walks on, his figure small against the vast horizon, the last bearer of memory, wandering through a world between breaths, not searching for magic, but walking alongside its sleep. The night deepens as the wizard moves through the empty plain, and soon the faint glow on the horizon fades into a shadowed silence. The stars above are faint, cold, like distant embers trapped in glass. Yet he keeps walking, guided by something older than sight, a pull that hums quietly in his bones. It draws him toward the heart of what once was Fire Country. He remembers it well. The heat that shimmered in the air, the way flames would dance like living thoughts, and the laughter of those who commanded them. The Fire Kingdom had always been restless, proud, radiant. Its towers were built from obsidian and molten glass, its sky forever lit by the bloom of a living sun. But when magic faded, even flame lost its hunger. Now the land lies still beneath a sky of ash. What was once molten has turned to stone, and what once roared now sleeps. The wizard stands at the edge of a great basin, a hollowed wound in the earth where the fire palace once stood. The ground glows faintly beneath a thin veil of dust, not from flame, but from memory. The heat that once burned here is long gone, yet its spirit lingers, clinging to the stones like the scent of smoke after rain. He steps forward, his staff tapping softly against the ground. With each step, he can almost hear the whisper of the flames that used to greet him. They were never quiet things. They spoke in crackles and bursts, impatient to be alive. He remembers how the fire wizards used to joke that the flames had moods of their own, that sometimes the kingdom burned brighter when laughter filled its halls. He walks slowly toward the basin's center, where a great ring of fused glass forms a perfect circle. It is all that remains of the fire throne. Once it burned with an eternal core, its light stretching across the kingdom, a reminder that warmth was both a gift and a burden. Now it lies hollow, its glow reduced to a faint pulse that rises and falls like a dying breath. The wizard kneels beside it, placing a hand on the glass. It is cool to the touch, but beneath that stillness he feels something alive, an echo of what once was. His eyes close and the silence begins to change. A soft hum rises from the ground, and for a fleeting moment, the world remembers. The glass flickers with light, faint shapes moving within it like reflections caught in dream water. He sees the fire people, silhouettes of warmth and motion, walking through halls of flame. He sees the Fire King, his crown a living blaze, holding court in a chamber of heat and laughter. And he sees her, the Fire Princess, her eyes like dawn breaking through smoke, standing before the throne with her hands outstretched, as though holding the kingdom's heart itself. The memory trembles. The wizard watches, unmoving, afraid to disturb it. The air grows warmer. The scent of smoke and cinders fills his lungs, and he feels the faintest tickle of warmth against his skin. He remembers visiting this place in the old days. He was younger then, more certain of what magic was. The Fire Princess would welcome him with a grin that could outshine the hearthlight. She would speak of flame as something alive, something to be listened to, not tamed. Fire, she once told him, doesn't just burn, it remembers. Every spark carries the story of what it touched. He didn't understand it then. To him, fire was energy, a tool to be bent to will. But now, as he kneels in the ruins, he finally feels what she meant. The air itself is telling a story, one of warmth, hunger, creation, and loss. He leans closer to the faintly glowing circle and whispers softly, "If you remember me, let me see your light once more." For a moment, nothing happens. Then, from deep beneath the glass, a flicker stirs, small, trembling, but alive. A single spark rises into the air, drifting like a firefly. It hovers before him, flickering weakly, its glow the color of old embers. The wizard watches in silence, afraid even to breathe. The spark wavers, then pulses brighter as if recognizing him. It circles slowly around his hand, leaving faint trails of gold in the air. He can feel its warmth, gentle and fragile, a heartbeat long forgotten. He lifts his hand slightly, and the spark lands in his palm. It rests there like a drop of sunlight. He smiles faintly, whispering, "You're still here." The spark brightens at his words, its glow steadying. Then it drifts upward, spinning lazily into the dark. As it rises, the basin responds, the faint glimmers beneath the glass, stirring to life, spreading outward in soft rings of color. The entire circle begins to pulse, slow and rhythmic, as if something buried deep within is waking. The wizard steps back, his eyes wide. The faint heat against his face feels like a long-lost friend brushing against him. It doesn't grow wild, it doesn't burn, but it lives, a quiet warmth that fills the emptiness with something like peace. He looks around at the basin, at the stone hills that once burned with eternal flame. For the first time in centuries, the shadows dance. Faint silhouettes of old fire spirits shimmer along the edges, their outlines made of memory and light. They do not speak. They do not move. But they are there, flickering like candles caught between life and dream. The wizard bows his head. "I came to see if anything remained," he whispers. "And you've shown me that even memory burns." He lingers there for a while, standing among the quiet flickers. The night feels softer now, warmer, as though the land itself exhales a sigh of relief. He knows the fire won't return. It no longer has the strength. But its spirit has not vanished. It has become gentler, more patient, a memory that refuses to fade. As the glow begins to fade once more, the wizard turns away, leaving the circle behind him. The light follows for a moment, casting his shadow long against the cracked earth. Then it fades back into stillness. He walks on, feeling the echo of warmth against his palms. The path ahead leads deeper into the ruins, where the remnants of the fire city crumble beneath layers of ash. He can still see the outlines of old towers, their blackened bones reaching for the stars like fingers grasping for forgotten light. He wonders if any of the fire people still exist, if somewhere deep beneath the cooled crust they slumber as embers waiting for a new dawn. The thought comforts him. Fire never truly dies after all. It only rests until the world needs warmth again. He continues walking through the dark streets, his staff tapping softly against the glassy ground. Occasionally, he sees faint flickers along the walls, patterns of light that vanish as soon as he turns. They are like whispers following his steps, fragments of laughter, songs, and arguments that once filled the air. The memory of fire lingers in everything it ever touched. As the wizard moves deeper into the remains of the fire city, the silence grows thicker but not empty. It hums softly, a residue of warmth that clings to the edges of things. The air here smells faintly of charcoal and time, like an old hearth that hasn't burned in years, yet still remembers the shape of every flame it ever held. He passes through what must have once been the market square. The stone beneath his feet is warped and melted in places, forming strange ripples that catch the moonlight. He can almost imagine the sound of trade, the laughter of merchants made of ember and smoke, the crackle of fire pots roasting luminous fruit, the gentle hiss of magic as new charms were tested under watchful eyes. Now only shadows linger. He pauses beside a toppled brazier, half buried in ash. Its edges are scorched black, but at its center lies a single coal cold, lifeless. He crouches, brushing away the dust, and feels the smooth texture of the stone beneath. To most, it would be nothing, but to him it feels almost alive, as if it is waiting for someone to remember what it once was. The wizard takes a slow breath and whispers the first spark word that comes to his lips. It's an ancient tone, older than even his own memory, a word once used by the first fire mages to coax flame from darkness. The air trembles slightly. The coal flickers once, faint as a sigh, and then stills. The wizard waits, eyes closed, patient. Another breath. Another word. This time the coal stirs. A faint orange thread curls upward, no brighter than the edge of dawn. He cups his hands around it, protecting it from the wind. The spark does not grow, but it remains, a stubborn little light in the endless gray. He smiles, a weary kind of joy. "There you are," he murmurs, still remembering. He sits beside it, cross-legged, his staff resting on his knees. The coal's light casts a dim circle around him, revealing the faint outlines of long collapsed archways and broken tiles. The place feels smaller now, almost intimate, like a room that remembers the presence of its last guest. In the flickering glow, he speaks softly, as if the flame itself were listening. "I remember when fire meant more than destruction, when it was warmth, courage, connection. You taught us that." He isn't sure if he's speaking to the Fire Kingdom, to the long-departed princess, or to the element itself. Perhaps it doesn't matter. The flame wavers gently, as though in reply. He continues, his tone somewhere between confession and prayer. "I remember how afraid we were when the first magic began to fade. We thought we could reignite it. We tried every spell, every ritual, but we didn't realize maybe magic wasn't something we made. Maybe it was something that allowed us to exist." He glances down at the coal, which pulses faintly. And when it began to dream again, it didn't vanish. It simply changed its form. Perhaps it became this: small moments of warmth that survive even when the world forgets. He picks up the coal carefully, feeling its warmth against his palm. It doesn't burn, it comforts. He closes his hand gently, holding the glow as if keeping a heartbeat alive. For a moment he swears he can hear faint laughter, like the echo of children playing in the distance, or the hum of old music vibrating in the air. He opens his hand, and the light dims once more, settling into a gentle red glow. He sets it back in the brazier, letting it rest. "Sleep now," he whispers. "You've done enough." The ember cools, but the warmth stays in his chest, faint but steady. He stands and continues walking through the ruins, past melted towers that glint like glass, and arches that once framed the throne room. Along one wall, he finds an old mural scorched into stone, a depiction of the first fire mage holding a burning heart aloft to the sky. The lines are crude but powerful, the strokes filled with devotion rather than precision. He touches the mural's edge. The stone is warm beneath his fingers. The image seems to breathe. He remembers the stories, how the first fire mage didn't create flame but discovered it, that she found warmth hiding in the cold heart of the world and promised to keep it alive. Every Fire Kingdom ruler after her was said to inherit a piece of that promise. The wizard's throat tightens slightly. He wonders what happened to that promise. Did it end when the last flame went out? Or did it move elsewhere into memory, into stories, into tiny gestures of kindness still scattered across the sleeping world? He takes a step back, looking at the mural in silence. The face of the fire mage is worn smooth by time, but her hands still hold the burning heart. The glow of the coal in the brazier nearby flickers faintly against it, casting the illusion that the heart still burns. He closes his eyes for a moment, letting the scene sink into him. The old stone, the quiet warmth, the faint hum of what remains. When he opens them again, the air feels lighter. The ruins no longer seem cold or empty. They feel like an ember that refuses to die, glowing faintly beneath the ashes of time. The wizard turns to leave, but as he walks away, a soft glimmer catches his eye, a faint rhythmic pulse coming from the horizon beyond the basin. It's not fire, not quite, but something akin to it, the faint shimmer of old magic stirring in the dark. Without hesitation, he follows. The shimmer ahead grows clearer with every step, threading through the ruins like a whisper of dawn. The wizard moves toward it, his pace unhurried but steady, guided by instinct more than reason. The path slopes downward into what used to be the Fire Kingdom's heart, a vast chamber carved into the rock, where rivers of molten glass once flowed like veins of living light. Now those rivers are frozen in place, their surfaces smooth and translucent, reflecting the faintest glint of the stars above. Beneath the glass, shapes seem to sleep, twisting patterns, curling embers trapped in mid-motion, fragments of fire magic that never fully faded. He steps carefully onto the cool flow, hearing his footsteps echo softly, as if he were walking across memory itself. The air is warmer here, tinged with a faint sweetness, like fruit roasted in the heat of a hearth. The smell is comforting, homely even. It makes him think of laughter around a table, of long nights in the wizard academies when candles burned low and the air hummed with learning and life. At the center of the chamber stands a single pillar, tall, slender, and cracked from top to base. Around it are etched countless runes, glowing faintly with that same quiet shimmer he followed. The wizard approaches it with reverence, tracing a trembling hand along the surface. The stone feels alive, humming faintly beneath his fingers. He recognizes the language, the tongue of the first fire scholars, ancient even when he was young. It speaks of light born from pain, of transformation through loss, of how destruction and creation were never enemies, but partners in the same eternal dance. One line, carved deeper than the rest, catches his attention. When flame forgets itself, the world remembers for it. He mouths the words slowly, letting them settle into the stillness. The message feels personal, as though it had been waiting all this time for someone to read it. He lowers his staff and touches the base of the pillar, pressing his palm flat against the stone. A low vibration moves through him, not violent, but steady, like the slow beat of an ancient heart. The glow intensifies, and for a moment, he feels warmth blooming around him. The air shifts, rippling softly, and the chamber begins to breathe again. The faint light beneath the glass rivers flickers to life, forming slow waves that move outward in perfect rhythm with his pulse. Then, as if time itself takes a quiet breath, he is surrounded by the memory of fire. The chamber fills with color reds and golds and pinks, flowing like living ribbons through the air. Shapes emerge within them, fire spirits drifting gracefully, their bodies flickering in slow motion. They don't seem bound by form or purpose. They move like dancers caught in the last movement of an endless waltz. The wizard stands motionless, bathed in the soft glow. It's not the wild heat of living flame, but a gentler warmth, the afterglow of something that once burned brightly and now chooses to rest. He feels the ache of nostalgia settle deep in his chest. Yet it's not sorrow he feels, it's gratitude. The fire spirits begin to gather near the pillar, spiraling upward in lazy patterns. Their light gathers near the cracked summit, and from it, a single spark descends slow, deliberate, until it hovers before the wizard. It's small, almost shy, but within its glow, he sees flickers of memory images woven from heat and light. He sees the fire princess laughing beside a young flame knight, He sees the burning fields at twilight, the sky alive with orange clouds. He sees himself among them once, visiting as an honored guest, his robes glimmering with spells and pride. He reaches out a trembling hand. The spark hovers just above his palm, and as it touches his skin, the visions fade, leaving behind only warmth. He whispers softly, "You remember me, don't you?" The spark flares once in quiet affirmation, then drifts gently upward again. It floats to the cracked pillar, nestling within one of its fractures. The glow steadies there, spreading softly through the cracks like a slow heartbeat. The wizard smiles faintly. The pillar's runes respond, glowing brighter not in flame but in light. The warmth radiates outward, touching every surface of the chamber, turning the frozen glass rivers into translucent amber. For a moment the ruins look alive again. He closes his eyes and breathes deeply, letting the warmth fill him. It's unlike any fire he's ever known, calm, kind, ancient. It carries no hunger to consume, no need to destroy. It simply exists, as if the world itself were remembering what it felt like to be alive. Then, as gently as it came, the warmth begins to fade. The pillar's glow softens to a dim shimmer, the light under the glass rivers settling into quiet rest. The chamber exhales, the movement of air soft as a sigh. The wizard opens his eyes. The spark remains lodged in the stone, its faint light steady. He knows it will stay there long after he is gone, a small promise, burning in the ruins of a forgotten kingdom. He kneels before it, bowing his head. "Thank you," he murmurs, "for holding on when the rest of us forgot how." Rising slowly, he turns to leave, his staff tapping lightly against the floor. The sound echoes through the vast, glassy chamber, each tap a soft farewell. As he reaches the exit, he glances back one last time. The pillar's light shimmers faintly in the distance, a heartbeat against the dark. He smiles and whispers, "Rest easy, you little flame." Outside, the wind greets him again. It's warmer now, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke and earth. The night sky stretches endlessly above him, and the stars seem a little brighter, as though they too remember the fire. He pulls his cloak tighter, gazing toward the horizon where the land folds into shadow. Somewhere beyond, he knows, lies the memory of water, the next remnant of Oo's ancient soul. And so the last wizard begins walking once more, leaving behind the sleeping warmth of a world that once burned with life. The wizard's path carries him out of the glowing ruins and into the open night, where the sky above stretches vast and unbroken. The air here feels cooler, the warmth of the Fire Kingdom fading behind him like a dream upon waking. But within him, the echo of that warmth remains soft, steady, like a quiet ember beneath his ribs. He walks until the hills rise again, their slopes marked by the pale skeletons of once molten rivers. The land hums faintly under his boots, a gentle rhythm that could almost be mistaken for breath. Every so often, a small flicker passes through the air, not fire, but the memory of it, brief and ghostly, vanishing before it can be touched. It makes him wonder if the elements themselves have not died, but merely learned to whisper instead of roar. As dawn begins to tease the horizon with pale gray light, the wizard reaches the crest of a ridge and turns back for one last look. Below him, the Fire Kingdom lies quiet, its ancient scars catching the first rays of morning. For a fleeting moment, the light reflects through the glass-like plains, and the entire basin glows not with heat, but with gentle color, like the fading heart of a sunset that refuses to be forgotten. He smiles softly. "You've become peace itself," he says under his breath. "You burned long enough to learn how to rest." The wind carries his words away, scattering them over the plains. Somewhere far below, deep within the hollowed palace, the single spark in the cracked pillar pulses once, faint but alive, as though nodding in return. He turns back toward the road ahead. The horizon glimmers faintly, where the silver edge of what was once the great river can still be seen in the distance. That will be his next destination, where the memory of fire will meet the stillness of water. But for now, he takes his time, moving slowly, letting each step sink gently into the soil. The world deserves to be walked through quietly. As he goes, his thoughts drift to the others, the friends and rivals of the age of wizards, the ones who burned brightest before the silence came. He remembers the ice mages, who tried to preserve the world's beauty and crystal, and the earth sorcerers, who spoke to roots and stones as though to kin. Each had believed their element would endure forever, never realizing that time itself would outlive their pride. And yet, even as he walks through the emptiness they left behind, he feels them, not as ghosts, but as warmth, as quiet hums in the soil and air. Their legacies linger not in monuments or spells, but in the shape of the world itself, in the way the wind moves, in the way light still dares to reflect from broken glass. He passes through a valley where the remnants of old battlefields lie buried under sand. Here and there, the faint outlines of magical sigils are still etched into the ground, though their glow has long since faded. He stops beside one, a massive, circular mark scorched into stone, large enough to have once contained an entire army. The center is cracked open, revealing a hollow filled with black glass. The wizard kneels beside it. This was no ordinary spell. He recognizes the pattern, the mark of a convergence ritual, one designed to merge opposing forces: fire and ice, life and decay, creation and entropy. A desperate attempt to bring balance during the final wars of the magical age. He remembers how many of them believed they could save the world by binding opposites together, but all they managed to do was silence both sides. He touches the black glass gently. It's smooth, flawless, almost mirror-like. His reflection stares back at him, old and tired. But beneath his face, he sees faint shapes, moving ribbons of light caught deep within the surface. They shift slowly, like sleeping embers beneath crystal. Still fighting, he whispers, even now. He sits back on his heels and lets his staff rest across his knees. For a while, he simply watches the light move. It's faint and slow, but it never stops. The fire hasn't died. It has only changed form, learning how to survive in stillness. He closes his eyes, feeling the warmth beneath the glass through his palms. In that quiet, he feels something stir, not a voice, not a presence, but a feeling. It's the memory of courage, of perseverance, the essence of what fire truly meant long before it became weapon or kingdom. When he finally opens his eyes again, the horizon has brightened to gold. The first true sunlight spills across the valley, and for a moment, the dark glass before him reflects it perfectly. It gleams like a pool of living light, and he can almost imagine it breathing again. The wizard stands, brushing dust from his cloak. The staff hums faintly as he lifts it, reacting to the rising warmth in the air. The magic is faint, barely there, but it answers him, acknowledging the life still lingering in the ruins. He takes one last look around at the sleeping embers buried in the stone, at the distant shimmer of the Fire Kingdom's glow. Then softly he says, "You are not gone. You are only resting." As he begins walking once more, the staff's tip catches the morning light, sending a brief glint ahead of him like a guiding flame. The path ahead leads toward the riverlands, where the air smells of old rain and moss, where the world remembers how to heal. He moves slowly, savoring the stillness between steps. The memory of fire trails behind him, warm against his back, not a burden, not a loss, but a quiet companion. And though the world around him seems asleep, somewhere deep within the earth, beneath glass and ash, a single ember stirs, glowing faintly brighter. It does not seek to return to what it once was. It only remembers patiently what it means to be alive. The wizard feels it, even from afar, the faintest heartbeat of the element that first taught him warmth. He smiles, lifting his gaze to the pale horizon. Keep dreaming. I'll carry your story forward. The wind rises gently, carrying with it the scent of old smoke and the quiet rhythm of a world that still breathes. The wizard's cloak flutters softly, catching the light, and for a moment, it looks as though a flicker of fire walks beside him, the last echo of a kingdom that refused to vanish into darkness. And as he descends from the ridge, the world around him seems to shimmer faintly, not burning, not blazing, but glowing, gently and endlessly, with the memory of fire. The wizard's journey carries him from the pale plains of glass into a world reborn in silence, a green vastness that stretches farther than his eyes can see. The air here is thick with scent, damp and ancient, carrying the perfume of moss and the faint sweetness of unseen flowers. He knows this place, or rather, he remembers it from the edges of old maps and older dreams, the forest that once slept through centuries of chaos untouched by flame or frost. Now it does not just sleep, it dreams. He steps past the first trees, their roots winding like the bones of great sleeping beasts beneath the soil. The trunks rise high into a canopy of living shadow, their bark carved by the slow patience of time. Some glow faintly with veins of blue and gold light, the last whispers of the magic that once flowed freely through all living things. Every sound feels softened here, each footstep muffled, every breeze slowed to a sigh. Even the sunlight, when it filters through, arrives hesitant and green-tinted, like it has been dreaming too. The wizard stops and lays a hand on one of the trees. The surface feels warm, alive, as though the tree is aware of his presence. His staff hums gently, resonating with the same quiet rhythm that pulses through the ground. He can feel the old language of magic sleeping in the roots, tangled like forgotten words beneath the earth. As forest, he murmurs, it never truly woke again after the old days. It kept the dream going when the rest of the world forgot how. He remembers stories told by druids long ago, tales of a time when the forest had a will of its own, when it grew in patterns that reflected the world's moods, when trees whispered to one another across miles, trading memories like gifts. They said that if you listened closely enough, you could hear the forest dreaming. Back then he had dismissed it as poetic nonsense. But standing here now, surrounded by this living hush, he begins to understand what they meant. Every leaf that stirs, every petal that trembles on unseen wind, feels like part of a great slumbering mind. The forest is not simply alive, it is remembering. He walks deeper, guided by trails that seem to form before his feet. The deeper he goes, the older the world feels. Mushrooms the size of shields rise from the soil, glowing faintly. Vines hang down like curtains of emerald silk. The air grows thicker, filled with soft humming, a low, endless tone that vibrates through his bones. It sounds almost like the murmur of a lullaby sung by something enormous and gentle. There are no animals here, not anymore. But he senses life all around him, not in form, but in essence. The trees themselves are the dreamers. Their roots speak to one another through the ground, carrying memories and thoughts through webs of mycelium and stone. Once the wizards tried to understand that network, tried to speak through it, but it was too vast, too patient. The forest's time was not measured in hours or centuries, but in cycles of breath and decay. As he passes through a grove where the trunks twist like dancers frozen mid-motion, he feels a shift. The air trembles, and a faint light ripples through the leaves above him. The humming grows louder, swelling like a voice waking from deep sleep. He pauses, closing his eyes. The rhythm beneath his feet changes the heartbeat of the earth, quickens slightly. The forest has noticed him. He kneels, placing both hands on the soil. The warmth surges up his arms, slow and deliberate. Images flood his mind, not words, but sensations. The crackle of lightning long ago, the first spark of fire from a storm. The sound of rain sinking into the ground after 1,000 years of drought. The laughter of a child running through leaves. The pain of branches broken in war. And then, the deep, sweet peace of centuries spent in silence, healing, dreaming. The forest does not speak to him in language. It speaks in memory. He gasps softly and pulls back his hands, his eyes wide. "You remember everything," he whispers, "even what we tried to forget." The light around him deepens into shades of green and gold. The humming resolves into something like a melody, slow, cyclical, full of warmth and sorrow. He realizes the forest is not just dreaming of itself, it is dreaming of of the laughter and the pain, the empires that rose and the rivers that dried. It dreams of the time before wizards, before kingdoms, before words. It dreams of the first pulse of life that ever touched the soil. The wizard walks again, but now each step feels reverent. He is walking through memory incarnate. He feels like an intruder in a temple made of roots and light. Yet the forest does not reject him. If anything, it seems to lean toward him, as if curious about this frail remnant of magic wandering through its veins. He comes to a clearing where an ancient tree stands alone. It towers over the rest, its bark smooth and pale as bone, its leaves shimmering with every color the light can hold. Around its base lies a pool of still water, so clear it looks like a mirror. The surface ripples faintly, though no breeze stirs. The wizard approaches slowly. He recognizes this tree not from memory, but from stories whispered by the last druids before they vanished. They called it the dreaming heart, the source of the forest's endless slumber. It was said to have grown from the seed of the very first tree, nurtured by forgotten gods who once walked the earth. When they left, they gifted the forest with one command: remember us. And so it had. For millennia, the dreaming heart had held the memory of life itself, replaying it endlessly in the deep sleep of the green. The wizard kneels at the edge of the pool, gazing into its reflection. But instead of his own face, he sees visions flicker across the surface forests in bloom, creatures long extinct, druids performing rituals under moons now broken, laughter echoing from unseen villages. Then, just as quickly, he sees those same things fade, crumble, and return to soil. The pool shows him not what is, but what was, and what the forest still dreams of. His voice trembles as he speaks. You kept it all. Every life, every death, every song. You kept them safe. A soft wind rises in answer, swirling the leaves around him. They move as though in slow applause, a gentle acceptance. The forest is not proud. It does not cling to the past. It simply holds it, tenderly, as one might hold a memory of love. The wizard's staff begins to glow faintly, resonating with the same pulse as the forest's heart. He feels the connection forming, not as power, but as understanding. This was what magic had always been meant for, not domination or control, but remembrance, to help the world remember itself when everything else fades. He looks up toward the shimmering canopy, and for the first time, in a long while, he feels something like peace settle in his chest. The forest does not need his help. It does not seek to be awakened. It dreams willingly, lovingly, and in its dream, the world continues. The wizard lingers in that clearing for a long time, letting the rhythm of the dreaming heart settle into his bone. Each breath he takes feels slower or deeper, as though his body is learning to match the forest's gentle tempo. The stillness is not empty here. It hums with meaning. Even the smallest motions, a drifting leaf, the faint ripple across the mirror pool, feel deliberate, part of a story being written in silence. He takes off his hood. His hair, silvered long ago by years and magic, glows faintly in the green light. "Do you still remember us?" he asks softly, though he already knows the answer. The forest is not forgotten. It remembers even the smallest flicker of what once was a candle flame, a whispered spell, a promise made beside a river long gone. For a moment he feels the stirrings of the old magic trying to awaken inside him. It glows faintly behind his ribs, rising like embers in a long, cold hearth. He raises his staff not to cast, but simply to feel that warmth one last time. The light spreads along the wood, faint as starlight seen through mist. When he touches the pool again, the ripples form patterns not random, but circular, spiraling inward until they converge on a single point of light deep beneath the surface. He leans closer, and for an instant he sees faces, not his, not anyone's he knows, but generations of wizards and druids, healers and poets, all those who once spoke to the living green. They smile at him through the reflection, eyes soft and knowing, before dissolving again into the shimmer of water. A quiet thought rises in him like a voice remembered from childhood. "You were never apart from us. You were always the forest, too." The thought doesn't frighten him. Instead, it fills him with a strange serenity. He understands now that his magic was never his own. It was borrowed, a gift from the world, lent for as long as he could carry it. Every spell he had ever spoken, every incantation whispered under the stars, had been part of this same pulse, this same endless dream of life remembering itself. He sits by the pool, tracing runes in the damp soil. They're symbols so old that even he can't recall their full meanings, but the act of drawing them feels right. One rune for growth, one for time, one for the bridge between life and memory. The lines glow faintly, then fade, absorbed by the ground as though the forest is taking them back. The wizard closes his eyes and listens. In the distance, the forest hum deepens, a sound like thunder slowed down until it becomes music. He realizes it's not a storm, but the echo of roots shifting, the trees stretching slightly, almost breathing. It is easy to imagine that somewhere beneath his feet, an entire network of thought is stirring. Each tree remembers its place, its shape, its history. When one leaf falls, 1,000 others acknowledge its journey back to the earth. When one branch breaks, the rest lean gently to balance the absence. The forest is not simply a place, it is a single, continuous being. And in its dreaming, he finds a reflection of himself. He, too, has spent centuries remembering the rise and fall of kingdoms, the fading of magic, the long, quiet years of solitude. He, too, has been a vessel for memory. He speaks again, though his voice is almost a whisper now. "If you are the dream, then what am I?" The last waking thought? The question fades unanswered into the canopy, though somewhere far above, a flock of glowing spores drifts down from the branches. They twirl lazily, like golden snow, settling on his shoulders and hair. Each one glimmers briefly before dissolving into faint light. They feel like blessings, or perhaps farewells. He begins to walk again, following no clear path. The forest opens gently before him, as if guiding him towards something deeper. He feels the temperature change, the air cools, scented faintly of rain and old wood. The ground beneath his boots softens, turning to a carpet of moss so thick it silences even the sound of his steps. As he moves, he notices the remnants of ancient stone circles half swallowed by roots. Old shrines, perhaps, from a time when beings came here to offer prayers. Some are carved with runes shaped like suns and spirals. Others bear marks of hands, dozens, hundreds pressed into the rock, fossilized in devotion. He brushes his fingers against one of the stones. It feels alive, humming faintly. He senses the echo of thousands of voices layered within it, prayers for rain, for harvest, for forgiveness. All of them still here, suspended in time, feeding the dream of the forest. The wizard feels something stir in his chest again, a longing so deep it almost hurts. He wonders if this is what it feels like for the world to miss itself, for creation to ache for the days when everything was still connected, tree to sky, river to root, soul to soil. He stops beside one of the half-buried shrines and sits down. The light here is dim, dappled through the leaves above. Dust motes drift lazily in the air, catching the faint shimmer of magic still clinging to the stones. It feels safe here, like being in the center of a vast, gentle heartbeat. He takes a deep breath, the kind that reaches all the way down to the soul. Maybe this is what we were meant to do, he says softly. Not to keep the magic alive, but to help it fall asleep properly. The words surprise him, but they feel true. Magic was never meant to be eternal. It was meant to be cyclical, to rise, to fade, to rest, and one day, perhaps, to return. The forest understands that. It has always understood. He sits there for what feels like hours, maybe longer time, has softened its edges here. The forest doesn't count in seconds or suns, only in breaths and seasons. The wizard watches the light shift slowly above him, filtering through the leaves in rippling patterns. Each movement seems to speak, though without words, just the quiet pulse of understanding. He begins to hum an old song, one he hasn't sung in centuries. It's a tune once taught in the towers of the first wizards, a song meant to honor the spirits of nature, to remind them that humans still listened. His voice trembles, weathered and low, but the melody carries softly through the grove. For a moment, the forest hum joins in, vibrating through the ground and up his legs, through his spine. It feels like being part of a choir older than the stars. When the final note fades, he hears something else, a response, faint but clear, a whisper, like wind passing through hollow wood. At first he thinks it's just the trees, but then he hears it again, shaped like words. You are still part of the song. He freezes, heart fluttering. The sound is neither male nor female, neither near nor far. It exists within the rustle of every leaf and the breath of every root. The wizard bows his head. Then the world still remembers us, he says softly, even after all this time. There is no reply, yet he feels the air grow warmer, an answer in feeling, not speech. The forest remembers everything that ever loved it, and perhaps it still loves in return. He stands and moves deeper into the heartwood where the light fades almost entirely. The air grows thick and still. A faint glow guides his way, not from his staff, but from the lichen on the trunks, the slow pulse of living moss. It feels like walking through the veins of the earth itself. As he goes, the forest's dream deepens. He begins to see shapes forming in the mist, not ghosts exactly, but impressions of memory given light. A group of druids chanting around a bonfire, their hands raised in rhythm with the stars. A child chasing a glowing beetle through the roots. The spirit of a wolf resting beneath a fallen tree. None of them are alive, and yet they are not gone either. They live within the dream. The wizard's breath catches. Every step he takes now feels sacred, each movement an act of remembrance. He realizes that this place, this vast, endless forest, is the closest thing to immortality the world has ever created. He comes upon a massive fallen trunk, its surface covered in soft green moss and silver fungi. The tree must have stood for thousands of years before falling. Its roots, still half buried, stretch away like giant fingers gripping the soil. He lays a hand upon it, feeling the deep thrum of slow decay. Even in your ending, you feed the dream, he whispers. Maybe that's what all endings really are. Another kind of growing. He sits again beside the fallen giant, listening to the quiet rhythm of life and death, blending seamlessly together. The sound soothes him. It feels familiar, like the pulse of a spell long forgotten, or the beat of a heart once shared between him and the world. Now, he remembers the first time he touched magic, so long ago that it might as well have been another life. He'd been young then, standing before his master, palms open, eyes full of awe. Magic had felt like sunlight poured into his soul. It had lifted him, filled him with meaning. But over the centuries, that light had dimmed. The spells had become fragile, the words empty. He had thought magic was dying. Now, sitting here, surrounded by the forest's living dream, he realizes he was wrong. Magic didn't die. It only changed form. It flowed back into the soil, into the leaves, into the whispering sleep of the world. It became part of the dream so that one day it might wake again. He lowers his head, smiling faintly. "So this is where you went," he murmurs. "You didn't fade away. You just came home." A gentle wind stirs through the trees, brushing against his cheek like a hand. The light shifts again, revealing tiny motes of gold swirling in the air. They drift toward him, circling around his staff, then dissolving into soft warmth that settles over his shoulders. He feels lighter, as though the forest itself is easing the weight he's carried all his life. He looks around and sees that the roots nearby are glowing faintly the same soft pulse that beats in the heart of the dreaming tree. The light spreads outward, tracing invisible lines between every trunk, every vine, every patch of moss. He realizes he's watching the flow of the forest consciousness, the lifeblood of its dream. He closes his eyes and listens. Beneath the steady hum, beneath the whisper of wind, he can hear it clearly now, a low, endless rhythm, the sound of the world's memory breathing. When he opens his eyes again, the vision is fading. The light withdraws into the ground, the air grows still, and the moment passes like the end of a heartbeat. But the feeling remains a calm certainty that the world has not forgotten itself, that life continues in ways unseen. The wizard takes a slow breath and rises once more. The moss glows faintly beneath his boots as he steps forward, the forest guiding him toward what feels like its innermost core. He knows he is being led not by fate or prophecy, but by memory itself. The forest wants him to see something, and so he walks on through archways of twisted roots and corridors of green light, deeper into the dream that will outlive him. The air grows cooler as the wizard walks, and the sound of his breathing merges with the forest's slow rhythm. The path before him narrows until it becomes a corridor of intertwined branches. Each step feels as though he's descending through layers of memory, the dream deepening, the silence growing richer. The roots twist around him like veins of time, their faint glow pulsing with a steady heartbeat. At the end of this natural tunnel, the ground opens into a vast hollow. The wizard stops, breath caught in his throat. Before him lies the core of the dreaming forest, a great chamber of roots, suspended in stillness, lit by a dim golden light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. The ceiling drips with glowing resin, each drop hanging for an eternity before falling into the shallow pool below. The water glimmers faintly, holding reflections of trees that do not exist anymore, forests long turned to ash. In the center of the pool grows a single sapling, impossibly small, yet radiant. Its leaves shimmer between green and silver like they're made of moonlight trapped in glass. The wizard approaches slowly, each step echoing in the hollow like the ticking of a distant clock. He kneels beside the water, staring at the sapling in quiet awe. He realizes what this must be, the seed of the next world. All that the forest has dreamed, all that it has remembered, has gathered here, condensed into this fragile, luminous sprout. It is not merely alive. It is possibility itself, waiting for the right silence, the right darkness to grow. He reaches out a trembling hand but stops just before touching it. The sapling seems to glow brighter at his nearness, as if recognizing him. The reflection of its light dances across his face, softening the lines of age and weariness. "Oh, you've been dreaming of beginning again," he whispers. Even after everything." The water ripples gently, and for a moment, he feels warmth radiate from the sapling, gentle, patient warmth, like sunlight filtered through memory. It is not asking him for help. It does not need saving. It only exists quietly, holding within it the promise that life will always find its way back. He lowers his hand, bowing his head. "Then perhaps my task is not to preserve the old magic," he murmurs. "It's to bless the new." The wizard takes his staff and plants it gently into the soil beside the pool. The faint glow within its wood flickers, answering the pulse of the sapling's light. He feels the last traces of his power rise within him, not as a force, but as a warmth, an echo of everything he's loved about the world. He lets that warmth flow outward through his hands, into the staff, and down into the earth. The air stirs, and for a heartbeat, the forest hum deepens into a sound so low and resonant it shakes him to his core. It feels like gratitude, like farewell. The sapling glows brighter, its leaves quivering with a gentle energy. The roots around the chamber respond in kind, lighting up one by one until the entire hollow breathes with golden veins. For a moment, it feels like the forest itself is alive again, fully awake. But then the light settles, softens, and the dream resumes deeper, slower, peaceful. The wizard exhales, leaning on his knees. His body feels lighter than it has in years. He looks around and notices that the resin, dripping from the ceiling, has begun to harden into crystalline shapes, amber shells capturing glimmers of the past within them. The memory of this moment, he realizes, will be preserved too. The forest never forgets a kindness. He sits beside the pool for a while, watching the sapling's soft glow. His heart feels full and quiet. He doesn't need to speak. The silence between them says everything, the acceptance, the continuation, the endless cycle of endings turning gently into beginnings. He looks down at his reflection in the water and sees that it too has changed. His face is not the weary shell of an old man anymore. It's softer, ageless, almost translucent, like the reflection itself is remembering him rather than showing him as he is. He smiles faintly. "I suppose this is what it means to fade properly, to become part of the dream instead of trying to wake from it." The sapling sways, its leaves rustling softly in response. He stays there until the glow of the sapling becomes the only light left in the chamber. The forest above sleeps on, dreaming through its vast, interconnected memory. The hum has slowed to the rhythm of a heartbeat at rest. He knows it will continue long after he is gone, dreaming, remembering, growing new worlds from the bones of the old. The wizard closes his eyes. He can feel the moss beneath his hands pulse once more the slow, deep breath of the earth. He whispers one final spell, not in words of power, but in words of peace. "Dream well, old friend. Dream of the stars, of rain, of laughter. Dream of all that we were and all that we might be again." When he opens his eyes, the sapling's glow has spread, filling the chamber in a soft radiance that feels like dawn. The forest breathes deeply, as if turning in its sleep, and the wizard, the last of his kind, smiles. He rises, leaving his staff where it stands, rooted now beside the sapling. As he walks away, the roots close gently behind him, sealing the chamber once more. The forest resumes its dreaming, and above the quiet earth, a faint wind carries a single, peaceful note, the echo of a song that once belonged to magic, now belonging only to the dream. The wizard steps out into the dim green light, the moss soft beneath his boots, the forest whispering faintly in its sleep. Somewhere far above, sunlight filters down through the leaves, pale, fragile, and new. And in that quiet, the forest dreams on, holding within its endless slumber the memory of fire, of life, and of one old wizard who learned at last to rest. The forest fades behind him like a dream half remembered at dawn. The wizard walks through a valley of quiet light, where hills rise like sleeping giants beneath thin sheets of mist. The air here feels older, dry, and brittle, holding the faint taste of dust and iron. It is the scent of stone, of endings that have forgotten how to crumble. He knows where he's going, though he has never walked this path before. The memory of it hums faintly within him, like the echo of a half-spoken spell. Beyond the valley lies the last great relic of the old world, the Tower of Forgotten Names. It rises on the horizon like a broken tooth, its upper spire lost to the clouds. The stones that built it were quarried in the age when stars themselves were believed to sing. Each block carries faint etchings of names, once spoken in reverence, names of wizards, kings, gods, and wanderers whose deeds shaped the tides of history. But those names no longer hold power. They linger only as shadows of sound, carved into stone that no longer remembers who it served. The wizard approaches slowly, his steps steady and measured. The path to the tower winds through fields of fallen sigils, great slabs of rock inscribed with runes now cracked and overgrown with moss. Once these were the wards that protected the tower, keeping its knowledge sealed from unworthy hands. Now they lie shattered, their enchantments bled out into the soil long ago. When he reaches the base of the tower, he pauses. The entrance stands open, dark and wide, its gates long since rusted away. He peers into the shadowed interior and feels the weight of silence pressing outward. It's not an empty silence, it's heavy, layered with the echoes of centuries. The tower hums faintly, a deep, resonant tone that vibrates through his chest, like the sigh of a world too tired to speak. He steps inside. The air within is cool and dry, thick with the scent of parchment and stone dust. The vast hall stretches upward into darkness, its walls lined with towering shelves filled with scrolls, tomes, and relics. Some are bound in gold leaf and silk, others in cracked leather or woven vines. Every surface is covered in inscriptions, thousands upon thousands of names. The wizard runs a hand over one of the nearest walls, brushing away centuries of dust. Beneath his fingers, faint light stirs the letters, briefly glowing as if recognizing his touch. He traces the name aloud, voice trembling slightly. Nandril the Bright. He remembers her a master of elemental song, her laughter echoing across the floating cities of the east. She had vanished in the final storms, leaving behind only the music of thunder. The light fades again, and he steps back, looking up at the endless cascade of names above him. Every one of them once carried power. Every one of them once meant something. He walks deeper into the tower, his footsteps soft against the stone. The walls begin to close in as he climbs, spiraling upward along a narrow staircase. As he ascends, he sees carvings on the steps, symbols etched into the very stone, growing more primitive the higher he climbs. It's as though the tower remembers its own history backward, descending through time, even as he ascends through space. At intervals along the way, he finds alcoves where relics rest on pedestals. Cracked staves, faded robes, shards of crystal still glowing faintly. Each one a remnant of a wizard's life, carefully preserved in this mausoleum of memory. He stops by one and picks up a fragment of glass shaped like a teardrop. Within it swirls a faint mist, a captured breath of magic, long dormant, but not gone. He closes his hand around it gently, and for a heartbeat, he feels warmth, the memory of a spell once cast to heal, to protect, to love. Then it fades, leaving only stillness. Even the smallest spark remembers what it was, he whispers. higher he climbs. The light filtering through the cracks in the walls shifts from gold to blue to gray as the day wanes. Dust motes drift lazily in the air, catching what little light remains. The tower groans softly with age, each sound echoing like the sigh of a sleeping god. Eventually, he reaches a landing where a grand mural covers the wall, an intricate depiction of the birth of magic. In it, countless figures stand beneath a falling star, their hands raised toward the sky. From the star descends a single thread of light, weaving through their palms, binding them together. Beneath the image, a phrase written in old tongue reads, "Names are the roots of being." The wizard stands before it for a long time, tracing the faded letters with his gaze. He understands now why the tower was built. It was not a fortress, but a vessel for memory, for the essence of identity itself. Every name recorded here was a thread in the great tapestry of magic. And when those names were forgotten, the tapestry began to unravel. He whispers, "When the last name fades, even the stars forget how to shine." The sound of his voice carries up the spiral like a sigh, vanishing into the dark above. He grips his staff a little tighter and begins the final ascent. The steps grow narrower, rougher, as if carved by trembling hands. The walls lean inward, the air thinning with each breath. And yet, there's a sense of peace in the exhaustion, as though the tower itself is welcoming him home, recognizing in him the same weariness it has carried for ages. He passes inscriptions etched directly into the stairwell, desperate scrawls, fragmented prayers, names repeated over and over again, as though someone feared being forgotten. One reads, "To be remembered is to still exist." Another, "Let my voice echo when the stars go dark." The wizard runs his hand over the words, feeling the grooves worn deep by time. "You are still heard," he murmurs. "Every one of you." The tower hums softly in response, a faint vibration through the stones beneath his feet. It feels like gratitude or maybe relief. He climbs on toward the fading light, seeping from above, toward the place where all names go to sleep. At last, the stairway ends. The wizard steps into a vast, circular chamber near the tower's crown. The ceiling above is fractured, open to the endless gray sky. Wind sighs softly through the cracks, stirring the long banners that hang in tatters from the walls. Once these banners might have borne the crests of ancient orders, the Guild of Glass, the Circle of the Nine Flames, the Keepers of Dust. Now they hang faded, their symbols erased by centuries of wind and silence. In the center of the chamber stands a great stone table, covered in a thin layer of ash. Around it, 7 empty chairs are arranged in a circle, each carved with runes and initials worn nearly smooth. The wizard walks slowly around the table, brushing his fingers across each seat in turn. He knows these chairs, or rather, he remembers what they once represented. The Council of Names, the final gathering of wizards who had sworn to preserve the world's memory when the last magic began to fade. He can almost hear their voices now, faint echoes drifting through the hollow air, the sound of debate, of laughter, of grief held tightly behind composed words. He sees flashes of their faces, the sharp gaze of Mistress Lura, who could weave sunlight into silk, the gentle smile of Oro, who healed the wounded with whispers alone, the solemn eyes of Gendrick, who swore never to speak again after casting his final spell. They sit around the table in memory, spectral and calm, waiting for him to take his place among them. The wizard lowers himself into the final chair. The stone is cold beneath him. For a long moment, he simply breathes, listening to the tower's soft creaks, the murmur of the wind, the faint patter of dust settling. Then he speaks, barely louder than a sigh. "I remember you all. I remember the vows we made, to keep the names alive, until the stars forget their fire. He lays his staff across the table. Its once bright crystal is dull now, its light long since spent. He draws a circle in the ash with his finger, then writes a single word in the center, his own name. For the first time in centuries, he says it aloud. The sound fills the room like a spark, faint and fragile, yet resonant enough to stir the air. The walls seem to lean closer, the banners lifting slightly in the quiet wind. There's power in it. Still not the kind that bends the world, but the kind that remembers, the kind that refuses to disappear. He looks up at the open sky. Through the broken ceiling, he sees clouds drifting slowly past, their edges faintly tinged with color. The first trace of sunset. The light slips down the fractured stones, touching the words carved into the table's edge, a final message from those who came before. Magic is the memory of what we loved. He closes his eyes, whispering the phrase again and again until it feels like prayer. The words remind him of what fire once meant. Not destruction, but transformation. Fire was the memory of life itself, the eternal act of becoming. It burned not to end things, but to renew them. As he opens his eyes, he notices the faint glow beneath the ash. The circle he drew has begun to shimmer softly, lines of light tracing through the dust. Slowly, names emerge from the stone, hundreds of them, then thousands. They bloom across the table like constellations, each one glowing faintly in the fading light. The tower begins to hum again, deeper this time, resonating from its very foundation. The wizard smiles faintly. "So you're still here," he whispers, "still waiting to be spoken." He rises from his chair and places both hands upon the table. The light pulses beneath his palms, and for a fleeting moment, he feels them all, the voices of the forgotten, the warmth of old friendships, the sorrow and beauty of countless lives lived beneath the stars. They swirl through him like a quiet tide, gentle and endless. He understands now that the tower was never a tomb. It was a seed one waiting for the memory of magic to be spoken again. And though he is the last to remember, his voice is enough to wake it. A single tear slips down his cheek. It falls onto the table, landing among the glowing names. Where it touches, a small spark of gold flares briefly, then fades, leaving behind a faint warmth. The tower answers with a low, resonant hum that trembles through the air like a heartbeat. He takes a step back, looking around the chamber. The walls glow softly now, their carvings illuminated, as though the stones themselves have remembered what they were. The runes shimmer, and for the first time in what feels like ages, the tower breathes. Dust lifts into the air like mist, spiraling upward toward the broken sky. The wizard closes his eyes again, and for a long while he simply listens. The sound is unlike anything he has ever heard. Not words, not music, but the whisper of names being remembered by the world itself. The air in the chamber feels alive now, as though the tower itself has begun to dream again. The walls pulse faintly, veins of light running through the stone like blood returning to a sleeping body. The wizard stands in the center, bathed in the glow of memory reborn, and feels the tremor of something vast and old awakening within him. Every name that glows on the walls carries a flicker of story, a trace of spirit. They whisper in soft tones, like leaves brushing against one another in a slow wind. He can feel them moving around him, not as ghosts, but as echoes of the world that once was. He hears laughter in the distance, the rush of rivers, the murmur of fire crackling in 1,000 hearths. It's as if the tower has become a vessel for every sound the world once knew. He realizes that what he's hearing is not the past returning, but the world remembering itself. For memory, when spoken gently, is not bound by time. It is the river that connects all moments. The wizard places a hand on his chest and whispers a spell, not one from a book, Not one he learned from a teacher, but one born from instinct. It's the spell of gratitude, of letting go. The light gathers around him, coiling like ribbons of gold and blue. His cloak flutters softly as the air stirs, and for a moment he seems to shine from within. The tower hums in harmony with his voice, as though the stones themselves are singing back to him. He doesn't need to control it. He simply listens, lets it happen, and becomes part of the song. He understands now what all wizards eventually learned, that magic was never about power. It was about remembrance. Every spell, every ritual, every charm was a way of saying, I see you. I remember you. You still exist. Magic was how the universe told itself that it was alive. He begins to walk slowly around the table, tracing the glowing names with his fingertips as he passes. The names ripple with light, and the tower responds, ancient mechanisms stirring deep below, unseen gears turning, doors shifting open after ages of rest. The air becomes thicker, shimmering faintly as if filled with sunlight beneath water. Through the broken ceiling above, he glimpses something extraordinary. Faint trails of color drifting across the clouds, like the northern lights returning to a world that had forgotten color. The wind carries a soft hum, not unlike distant voices singing low, reverent, unending. He knows that this won't last. The spell of remembrance cannot hold the world forever. The energy that now glows through the tower is the last breath of ooze memory, one final bloom before the quiet. But that is enough. Magic, after all, never needed to last. It only needed to be felt. He looks once more at the word he wrote in the ash, his name, faintly shining now among the thousands of others. For so long he had carried it like a burden, a lonely beacon of something the world had outgrown. But standing here, surrounded by the glow of the past, he feels the weight lift. His name is no longer just his own. It belongs to the tower now, to the memory, to the endless chorus of those who came before. He exhales, slow and peaceful. Then it's all right, he said. If this is the end, it's a kind one. The light responds, swelling slightly before beginning to fade. One by one, the names on the table dim, returning to quiet stone. The glow in the walls sinks deeper, as if absorbed into the tower's hearts. The wind grows still. The song dwindles into silence. He stands in the dim afterglow, listening to the last traces of magic fade into the air. And in that silence, he doesn't feel loss. He feels peace. He looks around one final time at the empty chairs, the banners, the quiet ash, and he smiles. The tower remembers, he whispers, and that's enough. Then, turning toward the open stairway, he begins his descent. His staff taps gently against the steps, the sound small and steady, a rhythm that echoes like a heartbeat through the empty halls. As he passes, the light in the walls flickers one last time, not to call him back, but to bid him farewell. The descent feels longer than the climb. Each step carries him deeper into stillness, further away from the pulse of that brief illumination. But he carries its warmth with him, a glow beneath his ribs, soft and steady. When he reaches the base of the tower, a night has settled over the valley. The sky is painted in shades of violet and deep blue, and the stars, faint and slow to appear, shimmer with the last breath of dusk. He steps outside. Behind him, the tower stands silent once more, its stones cold and unmoving. Yet for a moment, he swears he can see faint traces of light still glowing between the cracks, like embers refusing to die out completely. The Tower of Forgotten Names breathes one last time, then still's not dead, but asleep. He looks up at the stars, and for the first time in a very long while, he feels them watching back. Not as distant gods, not as unreachable fires, but as quiet witnesses to the last story of the last wizard. The night stretches wide and gentle across the land, draping the ruins in a thin veil of blue light. The wizard stands at the base of the tower for a long time, watching the stars shimmer faintly through drifting wisps of cloud. The wind hums through the broken stones, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old magic. The kind that lingers not because it's still alive, but because the world hasn't quite forgotten what it felt like. He leans lightly on his staff and lets his gaze wander across the valley. From this height, he can see the faint shapes of what once were kingdoms, the outlines of fallen walls, the quiet humps of collapsed bridges, the shadows of cities that used to glitter like constellations in the night. Now they are only gentle slopes, softened by centuries of time, wrapped in silver mist. And yet, as he looks upon them, he doesn't feel sorrow. Instead, he feels the same calm that comes at the end of a song, that quiet satisfaction that the melody was heard, that it reached its final note without hurry. He whispers softly to the stars, "You remember, don't you? All the names I can't." A faint shimmer ripples across the sky, not an answer, not exactly, but something close enough. The stars twinkle brighter for a moment, and the wind stills. The wizard smiles. He begins to walk again, moving away from the tower and down toward the valley. The grass, long and silver with dew, brushes against his robes as he passes. His footsteps make no sound. Somewhere in the distance, a small stream glimmers faintly, its surface reflecting the stars. The sound of its trickling feels impossibly alive in the stillness. As he nears the water, he lowers himself to his knees and dips his fingers into the cold current. It runs clear and bright, untouched by ash or ruin. He feels it flow around his hand, and he can't help but think that perhaps even this water remembers. Maybe the stream still carried traces of the old world, faint ripples of laughter, whispers of spells once sung beneath moonlight. He cups a small handful and brings it to his lips. The water tastes like the first rain after a long drought, sharp, clean, and new. For a brief moment, it feels as if the world itself is offering him a final gift, a reminder that life, no matter how faint, endures. He sits beside the stream for a while, watching it weave its way into the distance, a silver thread stretching between the sleeping hills. The tower behind him fades into shadow, its peak just barely visible against the horizon. A soft fatigue begins to settle into his bones, not the weariness of a traveler, but the deep, quiet exhaustion of someone who has reached the end of their story. He doesn't fight it. He simply breathes, letting the cool night air fill his lungs. He remembers when the air used to hum with magic, when every gust carried sparks of invisible power, when the ground beneath his feet thrummed with the rhythm of living enchantment. Now it is silent, but he realizes that silence has its own beauty. There's a different kind of magic in stillness, the kind that belongs to endings. He looks down at his hands. They tremble faintly. The skin pale and lined, the veins glowing faintly with the last traces of old energy. The glow pulses once, like a heartbeat, then fades. The staff beside him hums softly in response, a final acknowledgement. A quiet thank you. He smiles, leaning back on the grass, his eyes fixed on the sky. The stars seem closer tonight, brighter somehow. He thinks of all the names he read in the tower, all the lives that once shaped the weave of the world. He wonders if, somewhere beyond those lights, their spirits still linger, not as wizards or kings or creatures of power, but as whispers of starlight, carried forever across the endless dark. He feels no fear at the thought, only peace. The kind of peace that comes when every question has finally been asked, and the only thing left is to rest. The staff beside him begins to dim, its crystal pulsing softly one last time. The glow travels down its length, then seeps into the soil where it disperses like dust. The earth accepts it gently, drinking in the last spark of magic. The circle is complete. As he closes his eyes, he feels the night gather around him. Not cold, but warm, like a blanket woven from memory and light. He hears the faint hum of the tower far behind him, a low, contented sigh that rolls through the valley like a lullaby. He lets out a quiet breath, smiling to himself. "Sleep well," he whispers, though he isn't sure if he's speaking to the tower, to the stars, or to himself. And as his breathing slows, something beautiful happens. The wind picks up, swirling softly through the grass, carrying with it a faint shimmer like dust made of light. It drifts over the hills, through the ruins, past the quiet tower, until it rises into the night sky, joining the stars in their slow, eternal dance. The world is quiet again, but not empty. Somewhere deep within the heart of U, in the forgotten soil beneath the tower, a single spark glows faintly small, patient and waiting. The last whisper of magic. And in that moment, even silence feels alive. The sea is endless, or at least that is how it appears to the last wizard as he reaches its edge, a horizon stretched thin and silver, where the sky folds gently into the water, and both lie utterly still. The waves no longer move here. They are frozen, mid-motion, caught in perfect glass, as though the ocean itself has fallen asleep and never woken again. He stands on a ridge of pale stone overlooking this unmoving expanse. The moonlight casts a faint shimmer across the surface, and for a moment, he almost forgets that what he's seeing isn't life, but memory. The sea of stilled stars, that was what the old text had called it, though he never thought he'd see it with his own eyes. A place at the farthest edge of the world, where magic once gathered to rest when its work was done. The air is cool and utterly silent. Even the sound of the wind is gone. His cloak barely stirs, and the faint tapping of his staff feels loud enough to echo across eternity. The only motion comes from his own reflection, rippling faintly across the frozen water, as though it remembers how to move. He descends slowly, stepping down from the ridge onto a narrow path of crystal sand. Each grain glows faintly beneath his feet, like the dust of fallen stars. He kneels and runs his fingers through it, feeling the smooth, weightless texture. It isn't sand at all. He realizes it's starlight that has cooled into form. Every speck once burned with the brilliance of a living sun. Now it rests here, quiet, waiting for the next dawn that may never come. The wizard looks out over the vast stillness and feels something stir within him, not sorrow, but awe. It feels like standing in a cathedral made of frozen time. The sea stretches into the infinite, reflecting constellations that no longer exist, their faint echoes preserved in the mirrored surface. Above him, the stars themselves are dim, their light slow and heavy, as if the sky has forgotten how to breathe. He steps closer to the edge, tapping the surface of the sea with the end of his staff. The sound it makes is delicate, like glass chiming under moonlight. The ripples spread outward, not through movement, but through light. Circles of brightness bloom gently across the surface, fading as they go. For a moment, he swears he can see faces within the sea, faint, distant, shimmering just beneath the surface. They are not ghosts or memories, but impressions of stars long dead. Every one of them carries a different emotion: joy, sorrow, peace, longing. They are the feelings the stars left behind when they burned out. He speaks softly to them, though he doesn't expect an answer. "You've all stopped moving, haven't you? You've all fallen asleep." A faint pulse of light flickers beneath the waves, as though the sea itself heard him and wished to respond. He smiles. He remembers old stories once told around quiet fires, back when wizards still gathered to speak of things they didn't understand. Some said this sea was the graveyard of the cosmos, where fallen stars came to rest when they grew too tired to shine. Others said it was the birthplace of all magic, that it was from this still water the first spells had risen, born from light, learning to dream. He doesn't know which is true. Perhaps both are. Perhaps neither. Perhaps truth and myth were never meant to be separate. He begins to walk along the edge of the frozen water, his reflection keeping perfect pace beside him. The stars above shimmer faintly on the surface below, creating the illusion that he's walking between two skies, one real, one remembered. The air hums faintly around him, a low, distant vibration, like the fading resonance of a song once sung by the universe itself. After a while, he comes upon something half buried in the glowing sand, a fragment of glass, roughly circular, its surface smooth and faintly pulsing with light. He lifts it carefully, brushing away the sand. Inside the glass swirl faint constellations, moving slowly, as though trapped within their own reflection. He knows what this is, a piece of the firmament, a shard of sky fallen in some ancient age when the heavens were still alive enough to break. He holds it up toward the faint light of the moon and sees his own reflection within it, framed by the soft glimmer of stars. His face looks older than he feels, or perhaps exactly as old as he is. The years weigh lightly on him now, not as burdens, but as layers of memory. Each wrinkle, each scar, is a line in the world's story. He slips the shard into his cloak. It feels warm against his chest, as though it recognizes him. He wonders if it remembers the same magic, that he does the kind that once flowed through rivers and trees, through hearts and dreams, the kind that made everything alive. The silence deepens. He can feel it pressing softly at his ears, not harshly, but like a lullaby whispered too closely. It is the kind of quiet that feels endless, not because there's nothing left to hear, but because everything that needed to be said has already been spoken. He kneels again, resting his hand on the glassy surface of the sea. The cold of it seeps through his skin, but beneath that cold, he feels something faintly pulsing a heartbeat, slow and deep. The ocean still lives in its own still way. It is not dead. It is dreaming. The wizard closes his eyes, keeping his hand pressed gently against the frozen surface of the sea. Beneath the smooth glass, he can feel faint vibrations, slow, rhythmic, ancient. It's as if the ocean is breathing beneath him, but in a language older than air or time. He stays like that for a long moment, listening to the world's slowest heartbeat. When he opens his eyes, he notices something subtle. The stars reflected in the still water are not quite the same as the ones above. The constellations have shifted slightly, their shapes rearranging into patterns that no sky has ever known. Some glow faintly in spirals, others in slow, expanding circles. It feels less like a reflection and more like a memory of the sea remembering how the stars once looked before they fell silent. He whispers softly, "You're still dreaming of the sky, aren't you?" The light in the water responds with a gentle shimmer. He begins to walk again, his steps slow and deliberate. The sand glows faintly beneath each footprint, as if his presence alone is enough to stir old memories awake. Each step leaves behind a fading mark of light that lingers for a few moments before vanishing. The air is cool and smooth against his face, and as he walks, he starts to hear something faint, a distant hum, far below the frozen surface. It is deep and melodic, more felt than heard. The tone is low, steady, like the distant rumble of an enormous heart, or the echo of a celestial song. The wizard pauses, closing his eyes again to listen more closely. The sound grows clearer, weaving softly through the silence. It reminds him of the way magic used to sound, that gentle, trembling resonance that came from the world itself when it was alive with meaning. He realizes that this is the voice of the sea of stilled stars, not dead, not gone, only sleeping beneath its own reflection. He kneels again, lowering his staff so that its dull crystal touches the surface. For a brief moment, the crystal flickers with light, reacting to the hum. He watches as faint ripples of brightness spread outward from the point of contact, tracing rings of energy across the frozen water. The sea answers him, acknowledging the last spark of living magic in the world. "You still remember," he murmurs, "even after all this time." A faint breeze stirs, then the first he's felt since arriving at the sea's edge. It carries with it a scent that he can't quite place, something like starlight and old rain, the scent of things that once burned and then became whole again. The wizard breathes it in deeply, feeling the cold reach his lungs, and for the first time in years he feels truly alive. He looks up, and the horizon seems to shift slightly. Far in the distance, where the frozen water meets the sky, he can see a faint glow, a line of pale gold spreading across the horizon. At first, he thinks it might be dawn, but no, it's softer, slower, more deliberate than sunrise. It feels like the world remembering how to make light again. The glow expands gently, illuminating faint shapes beneath the surface. He leans forward, peering closer, and sees movement, slow, vast shapes drifting in the deep. They are enormous, glimmering with the faint light of constellations, ancient creatures perhaps, or remnants of cosmic beings that once roamed the stars. They move like dreams, quiet, graceful, unbothered by time. He feels no fear, only reverence. "Even here," he whispers, "life remembers how to move." The glow beneath the sea brightens for a moment, as if in agreement. Then it settles back into a gentle pulse, like the rhythm of a sleeping world. The wizard takes a slow breath and sits at the edge of the water, legs folded, staff resting across his knees. His reflection shimmers faintly beneath him, two versions of himself, one above and one below, divided only by a thin veil of glass. For the first time, he feels as though he's sitting between two worlds, the one that has ended and the one that still dreams. He reaches into his cloak and pulls out the fragment of glass he found earlier, the piece of fallen sky. It glows faintly in his palm, resonating with the light of the sea. When he holds it close to the surface, the glow intensifies, as if recognizing a kindred presence. He hesitates for a moment, then gently lowers the shard into the frozen water. It rests there, gleaming faintly, and begins to sink, not through movement, but through light. Slowly it drifts downward, merging with the glowing shapes below, becoming one more star in the sleeping ocean. The wizard smiles faintly. "You're home now." The hum beneath the surface deepens, resonating through the ground, through his bones, through his breath. It's the sound of belonging, of something ancient finding its way back to itself. The sea of stilled stars glows brighter for a moment, then stills again, its light rippling like a sigh through the frozen expanse. The wizard stays there for what feels like hours, though time has long since lost its shape in this world. The light of the sea reflects softly on his face, tracing silver lines across the wrinkles and scars of his long journey. Every so often he whispers small words to himself, not spells, but memories of them. Words that once carried weight, once shaped the world, now spoken only to remember what language used to mean. He tries one now, a simple one. The first spell every wizard once learned: illuminate. His voice trembles, soft but steady, and for a brief instant, the crystal at the end of his staff flickers, as though a spark of recognition still lingers within it. But the light fades almost immediately, dissolving into the air like a sigh. He exhales, not in disappointment, but in quiet acceptance. Even the light has learned to sleep, he says. The sea remains still. The hum continues, slow, patient, unconcerned. He gazes across the horizon, where the golden glow has begun to deepen into a warm amber haze. The stars above shimmer faintly, their reflections mingling with the glow below until it becomes impossible to tell where the sky ends and the sea begins. It's like watching the universe fold gently into itself, dream upon dream. The wizard lifts his staff again, tracing lazy circles through the air. He isn't trying to cast anything this time. He's simply remembering what it used to feel like. the motion of it, the rhythm, the quiet dignity of belief. His thoughts drift back to when magic was not something used, but something felt, when the air shimmered with hidden possibilities, when every rock, every leaf, every drop of water whispered a secret name. Back when he wasn't the last, he can still recall his old companions, other wizards whose laughter once echoed through the towers and caverns, each with their own style of casting, their own favorite stars, their own songs of spellcraft. He can almost hear them now, the murmured chants, the hum of power filling the air like invisible music. But when he opens his eyes, there is only silence. A quiet smile tugs at his lips. He's long since made peace with being the last. But moments like this, the silence, the reflection, the hum of something ancient, make him wonder if magic truly ended, or if it simply changed form, spreading itself thin through everything, becoming the air itself. Perhaps the sea of stilled stars is the last remnant of that truth, a mirror of what once was, holding within it the faint memory of movement and meaning. He decides to test a theory. Reaching down, he touches the surface again, this time without his staff. The cold rushes up his arm, a shock that feels almost alive. He closes his eyes and focuses, not on speaking a spell, but on feeling it, remembering what it was like to listen rather than command. The hum deepens in response. For a brief, impossible moment, the surface of the sea ripples, not with water, but with light. The stars reflected beneath him begin to swirl, drawn toward the point of his touch. A faint warmth blooms around his hand, spreading outward. It's small, so small, but it's real. He feels it, a pulse of recognition. The sea is awake. He opens his eyes just as a thin line of light splits the horizon in two. It isn't sunrise. It's something older, a slow reawakening. The glow rises like a tide, illuminating the world with soft, trembling radiance. The still air hums. The stars seem to shimmer more brightly, their reflections trembling on the sea's frozen surface. The wizard's heart beats faster. He doesn't dare move. And then, from deep within the ice, a single point of light rises, a star ascending from below, not above. It climbs through the water, glowing brighter and brighter until it reaches the surface. There it rests for a moment, pulsing gently. It's small, fragile, and yet impossibly beautiful, a star that refused to fade. He leans closer, whispering, "You remember too." The star responds by flickering in rhythm with his voice. It's listening. He realizes then that he isn't alone, not truly. The world itself is still here, dreaming softly, waiting to be spoken to again, not with power, but with patience. Magic never died. It simply went quiet, the way old songs do when there's no one left to sing them. He reaches out his hand, hovering just above the floating star. The warmth radiates against his skin, gentle, comforting. And for the briefest instant, he feels it. The same energy that once bound everything together. The same hum that used to fill the world with purpose. Tears gather in his eyes as he whispers, "Thank you." The star trembles once more, then slowly drifts away, gliding across the frozen surface. Wherever it passes, the ice glows faintly, tracing a path of light like a painter's brushstroke. The wizard watches it go, smiling through his tears. He doesn't chase it. He doesn't need to. He knows what it means. The world still remembers, even if only through fragments, even if only through whispers. The sea of stilled stars is not an end, but a reminder, a quiet heartbeat of everything that once was, and maybe someday will be again. He sits there for a long time, letting the glow fade back into stillness. The ripples settle, the hum quiets, and the world folds once more into its familiar, sacred silence. But something inside him has changed. The faint pulse that once belonged only to memory now beats again within his chest. It's not power, not the roaring current of spellcraft he once wielded, but something gentler, older, a quiet harmony with what remains. He gazes at the horizon, where the golden haze has deepened into a soft violet, and the faint shimmer of dawn meets the sleeping stars. In that mingling light, the sea looks alive, as though the universe itself is breathing. The wizard closes his eyes and breathes with it. Each inhale draws in the scent of salt and memory. Each exhale feels like a prayer to the endless. When he opens his eyes, the floating star has vanished, but its path remains, a faint streak of light across the ice, marking the direction it traveled. Something within him stirs, a quiet intuition guiding his steps. He rises slowly, brushing frost from his robes. His staff catches the faintest glint from the sky, as though acknowledging his decision before he's even made it. He begins to walk. The sound of his boots on the frozen surface is almost musical, a slow rhythmic echo that blends with the hum beneath the ice. The light trail left by the star is faint, but clear enough to follow, winding like a river of memory across the vast, shimmering expanse. As he moves, he begins to notice faint shapes beneath the ice, silhouettes of what might once have been trees, towers, or creatures, long vanished, frozen in time, caught in the sea's eternal sleep. They look peaceful, like dreams resting beneath a blanket of starlight. He lowers his staff, letting the tip trace small circles over the ice, and whispers softly to them, small blessings, small apologies. He realizes something profound then. The sea of stilled stars isn't just a remnant of magic. It's a resting place, a place where the stories of the world have come to sleep, preserved in perfect stillness until they're ready to wake again. He pauses to rest. Kneeling, he presses his palm flat against the ice. The surface is smooth and cold, but beneath it, he feels faint vibrations, echoes of what once was, a pulse, a rhythm, like the heartbeat of something vast and sleeping. It occurs to him that maybe this is how the end of magic was always meant to be. Not a violent erasure, but a gentle descent into stillness, a dream rather than a death. The world wasn't destroyed, it simply closed its eyes. He remembers an old teaching from his youth. When the last flame fades, the world does not end. It exhales. Perhaps this is that exhale, the long, slow sigh of a universe returning to quiet. He looks up again toward the farthest edge of the horizon. There, beyond the reach of the frozen light, something begins to shimmer. A faint glimmer that doesn't belong to the stars. It's distant, yet familiar. A color that feels alive. For the first time in centuries, he feels a spark of curiosity. Not the kind that hungers for power or knowledge, but the kind that wonders simply for the joy of wondering. He walks toward it. As he does, the light seems to shift and move, not receding but guiding, as though aware of his approach. The hum beneath his feet deepens, resonating gently with each step. The wizard realizes that this song, this endless vibration of existence, was never truly gone. It had only grown too quiet for mortals to hear. And now, as he moves across the surface of the sea of stilled stars, it grows louder, not in volume, but in presence. It's the sound of memory stirring, of stories awakening. When he finally reaches the edge of the light's reflection, he sees something extraordinary. A fragment of the sky has fallen here, a piece of the firmament itself shaped like a broken shard of crystal, half submerged in the ice. Within it, the stars still move, swirling gently like trapped constellations. The wizard kneels beside it, his breath catching in his throat. He can see within the shard faint images flickering, glimpses of things long gone. A treehouse on a hill, a candy kingdom glittering under sunlight, a sword glinting in a boy's hand. Echoes of ooh. He touches the shard gently, tracing its surface with a trembling hand. The moment he does, a soft light blossoms from within it, spilling across the frozen sea like dawn breaking across the world. For a brief moment, everything glows, the sky, the sea, his staff, his eyes. The hum rises into a symphony, every note filled with the memory of what once was. And within that brilliance, he feels it again. The pulse of the universe, alive, eternal. The shard begins to fade, dissolving into the air like morning mist. The light softens, returning to the calm, silvery hue of starlight. The wizard stands motionless, his eyes filled with quiet awe. It's then that he understands. Magic never leaves, it only changes shape. Sometimes it becomes song, sometimes silence. Sometimes it hides in the sea or in the stars or in the memory of those who refuse to forget. He breathes deeply, feeling lighter than he has in centuries. He turns his gaze upward one last time. The stars above him shimmer in perfect stillness, like eyes watching kindly from afar. He bows his head to them in gratitude. Then, with a calm smile, he turns away from the sea and begins walking once more toward the faintest shimmer on the horizon, where the sky glows with the promise of something new. The last wizard walks on, leaving behind the sea of stilled stars, its surface reflecting not sorrow, but peace. The world sleeps still, but in its dreaming silence, something begins to hum again, softly, patiently, like a spell remembering its first breath. The wind is softer now. It carries the faint scent of something new, something that feels like dawn, though the sun has long since abandoned this world. The wizard walks, his steps slow but steady, each one leaving a faint shimmer in the frost behind him. He doesn't notice it at first, the way the air bends around his presence, how tiny lights flicker briefly in his wake. The world is quietly answering him. He has been walking for what could be days or perhaps only hours. Time here has dissolved into something more like rhythm than sequence. The sea is behind him now, though he can still sense its hum in the distance, like the final note of a song echoing long after it's been sung. Ahead lies a plain of stone and glass, glittering faintly in the dim light, as though the sky once fell and shattered there. He pauses to rest beside one of the glassy shards. It's smooth to the touch, almost warm, and faintly luminous from within. When he peers into it, he sees not his reflection, but something else entirely, a soft swirl of color, moving as though the shard still remembers the light that once filled it. He wonders if this place was once alive. Maybe it was. Maybe everything still is, in its own quiet way. He presses his hand against the shard and whispers, "Can you hear me?" A ripple moves across the surface. The color shifts, deepening, swirling faster. He can't tell if it's reacting to his voice or his thoughts. Either way, he can feel it listening. "Once I could speak the world awake," he says softly. "Now I can only speak to remember." The shard glows faintly brighter at his words, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The wizard closes his eyes and smiles. He sits there in silence for a while, listening to the faint sound of the wind weaving through the broken plain. It almost sounds like words, distant, scattered syllables caught between echoes. He tilts his head, trying to catch their meaning, and for a moment he almost understands. Then it strikes him. The sound isn't coming from the wind. It's coming from the shards themselves. Each one is humming at a slightly different tone, a different pitch. Together they form a melody, not music in the way mortals would know it, but something deeper, a resonance. He rises slowly, his heart beginning to beat in rhythm with the sound. His staff, as if remembering its purpose, begins to faintly glow at the tip. The air thickens with presence, the same way it used to when spells were spoken aloud. He doesn't know what he's about to do, only that he must. He takes a deep breath and begins to speak, not a word of command or control, but one of remembrance. A spell without structure, without intent, carried only by the weight of memory. His voice trembles at first, but it grows steadier, stronger. until it fills the air around him. The shards respond. Their hum deepens, intertwining with his tone until it feels as though the entire plane is singing. He feels it through the soles of his feet, through the grip of his hand on the staff, through the air itself. The world is remembering its own language, and he is only helping it speak. The melody rises, slow and patient, until the ground beneath him begins to glow. Light spreads through the cracks between stones, reaching outward in all directions like veins of fire, awakening after centuries of sleep. And as it spreads, he understands something he's never known before. Magic was never a force to be controlled. It was never about the power to shape or to summon. It was a dialogue, a quiet exchange between the living and the infinite. And all this time he had mistaken silence for death. But silence is not an end, it's a beginning. He continues speaking, his words blending seamlessly into the hum. He doesn't recognize the language he's speaking anymore. It isn't his own, nor any known tongue of wizards. It's older than that, older than ooh itself. The words come like breath, like heartbeat. The ground shimmers brighter. The plain, the horizon, even the distant sea, all begin to glow with faint, golden light. Not a blinding radiance, but a warmth like candlelight returning to a long, dark room. He feels tears forming at the edges of his eyes, but they're not tears of sorrow. They're of release, of recognition. For centuries, he had carried the weight of being the last. Now, as he stands in the soft music of a world remembering itself, he realizes he was never truly alone. Magic had not vanished. It had simply gone quiet, waiting for someone willing to listen instead of command. The hum rises again, and he feels the air vibrate around him like the inside of a living heart. The sky shifts from violet to silver. Tiny motes of light drift upward from the ground, swirling around him like soft snow. Each one pulses faintly as if alive. He recognizes them now. They're fragments of spells, echoes of every incantation ever spoken, every wish ever whispered. Each mote is a memory of creation, and together they are waking. The motes of light gather, drifting toward him as though drawn by some invisible current. They move slowly, deliberately, forming loose spirals around his staff, around his hands, around his shoulders. Each one carries a fragment of history, a memory of what the world once was, a glimpse of what it might still be. He raises his hands, letting them pass through the glowing orbs. They feel weightless, like warm air or sunlight caught in water. Each one hums softly as he touches it, vibrating with the faint echo of a spell that once was. He doesn't try to control them. He simply moves with them, allowing the rhythm to guide his voice. The hum of the plane deepens, layered now with thousands of threads, a tapestry of resonance. It's neither melody nor speech, but something older, more essential. The wizard closes his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He feels the pulse of the world itself, faint but insistent, beating in tandem with his own heart. He whispers again, this time not words, but intentions, not desires, not commands, only acknowledgement. I remember. I see. I am here. The light responds. One by one, the motes converge above him, forming a halo of faint luminescence. Their glow grows stronger, filling the plane with a soft radiance that doesn't burn but comforts. The shards embedded in the ground tremble slightly, catching the light and amplifying it, until the horizon itself seems to shimmer with quiet motion. The wizard takes a slow step forward. The staff taps lightly against the crystalline ground, and each tap sends a gentle wave of light radiating outward. The waves intersect with the motes, weaving them into patterns that ripple across the plane. Circles, spirals, interlocking lines, a dance of memory and creation, alive and breathing. He notices something remarkable. The light is not fleeting. It does not vanish. Even as he moves, it lingers, forming trails that trace his path. It is a spell unlike any he has ever cast, a spell without end, not bound to time, not dependent on energy. It is alive because it is remembered, and because it is witnessed. The wizard pauses to watch it spread. It reaches the edge of the horizon, touches the distant sea, glances at the shards of the broken sky, and folds gently into the night. The light carries with it a sense of continuity, a promise. Though the world has quieted, though the great towers and forests and kingdoms have fallen, something essential remains. Magic is not gone. It never truly ends. He kneels on the glowing ground, feeling the pulse of it through his fingers. The warmth of 1,000 remembered spells hums beneath his skin, and he realizes that he is not the last wizard in the way he once feared. He is the first in a new way, a witness, a keeper, a voice for all that the world still remembers. Slowly he rises, letting the glow swirl around him. His staff gleams faintly, but the power does not belong to him. It belongs to everything. The shards, the sea, the sky, the plane itself, they are all part of this living memory. And he, moving through it, carries it forward. He speaks softly, almost as if reciting a lullaby. May the world remember itself. May what is lost still speak. May the spark of magic never fade, so long as there is one who listens. The motes of light pulse in response, a gentle affirmation that echoes across the plain. The spell has begun, and it will continue, not through force or will, but through remembrance, through the quiet devotion of witnessing. The last wizard smiles. For the first time in centuries, he feels a profound calm. He is no longer burdened by endings, only held in the gentle continuity of what was and what will always be. And in that glow, in that soft, unwavering light, the spell that never ends begins to weave its quiet, infinite song across the world. The light flows around him, slow and deliberate, filling the plain with a warmth that is neither harsh nor intrusive. It moves in gentle waves, brushing over the shards, curling around his staff and drifting upward to meet the sky. Each mote of remembered magic hums faintly, resonating with the others, forming a network of quiet energy that seems boundless, infinite. The wizard feels it beneath his feet, through the soles of his boots, as though the very ground itself is awake and aware. He begins to walk again, slowly, carefully. Each step sends ripples through the glowing patterns, and the light responds with intricate spirals and lattices, patterns older than language or time. He notices that the shards embedded in the ground seem to lean slightly toward him, reflecting the motion of his passage. It is as if the world itself has chosen him as its witness, its caretaker, its quiet voice. Above, the sky begins to shift imperceptibly. The faint stars reflected in the sea of stilled stars shimmer, as though stirred by the same energy that moves through the plain. They flicker softly, like candles in a gentle breeze, acknowledging the spell without comment. The horizon glows faintly with hues of silver, lavender, and gold, blending together as though the world is exhaling light from its own memory. The wizard pauses, resting his hands lightly on his staff. He closes his eyes, listening, feeling, attuning himself to the rhythm that surrounds him. It is not merely the hum of magic. It is the pulse of existence itself, slow and deep, stretching across time and space. The spell that never ends is not something he casts. It is something he nurtures, a living thread of remembrance woven from the memories of every spell, every creature, every heartbeat that ever existed in Ooh. He speaks softly, each word deliberate and calm. Let what has been felt continue to resonate. Let memory carry the spark. Let the world breathe through its own quiet understanding. The motes respond with subtle flickers, and he can feel the gentle feedback of the spell in his chest. It is a dialogue and not a performance. The world remembers, and he bears witness. As he continues, faint forms begin to emerge from the plane, shapes he cannot fully identify, only sense, silhouettes of trees that once flourished, towers that once reached for the sky, small creatures caught in eternal play. They drift like faint echoes, half-formed, softened by time, each illuminated by the glow of the spell. The wizard does not touch them, does not speak to them. He simply acknowledges their presence, and in return, they pulse softly, as though answering a greeting that has traveled centuries. The shards beneath him react as well. Light runs along their edges, faint channels of luminescence connecting them, weaving an intricate lattice that stretches across the plane. Every shard hums at its own frequency, yet together they form a harmony, subtle and unhurried, like a symphony remembered rather than performed. The wizard walks among them, careful not to disrupt the flow, and he feels an extraordinary calm settle over him. He realizes that this is not only a spell, but a living record, a vessel for the past that does not demand an audience. It is quiet, but it endures. It is infinite, not because it is eternal in a forceful way, but because it is sustained by attention, by remembrance, by the simple act of being present with what once was. The spell that never ends is not a tool or a weapon. It is a bridge between time and memory, life and dream. As he moves toward the center of the plane, the light gathers more densely, coalescing into a soft sphere above the largest shard. It is a point of focus, a concentration of everything the spell represents. The wizard approaches it reverently, lowering his hands in a gesture of respect. He does not speak, does not act. He only exists in its presence, allowing the spell to pulse and breathe. From the sphere, faint ripples extend outward, brushing over the shards, flowing across the plane, reaching toward the horizon. He senses the rhythm of countless memories responding, soft and patient. For the first time in centuries, he feels the fullness of magic, not the kind that bends reality or summons power, but the kind that remembers, honors, and sustains. The sphere hums gently, and he feels the pulse travel through his veins. He is no longer merely the last wizard. He is a conduit, a quiet participant in the spell's infinite song. The light reaches up toward the sky, brushing the stars and the clouds, drawing them into its rhythm, touching every reflection on the frozen sea. The spell that never ends is no longer just beneath him. It is all around him, encompassing the plane, the shards, the sea, and the sky above. He breathes slowly, deeply, matching his heartbeat to the pulse of the spell. Each exhale spreads warmth. Each inhale draws in resonance. He knows he cannot finish this spell because it does not have an end. But that is precisely its beauty. It exists as long as it is remembered, and in this quiet act of witnessing, he ensures that it will never truly fade. For the first time in centuries, he feels a profound peace settle into his bones. Time loses meaning. The distinction between past, present, and future blurs. The light pulses steadily, infinite and patient. And he knows with certainty that magic itself is not gone. It has only shifted, becoming something quieter, something eternal. He kneels at the center of the plane, letting the hum wash over him. The shards glow softly. The sea whispers in faint reflection, and the stars above shimmer in delicate response. The spell that never ends flows through everything, carried not by force, but by the simple, enduring presence of someone who remembers. He whispers to it, not commanding, not asking, only acknowledging. You exist. You endure. You are seen. And in the response of the world, he hears the gentle, infinite song of Oo itself. The wizard remains kneeling, the soft hum of the spell wrapping around him like a cloak. Each mote of light drifts lazily through the air, some spinning in slow arcs, others hovering as though lost in thought. The shards beneath his hands pulse faintly, reflecting the soft glow of the sphere at the plane's center. Every vibration, every shimmer is a conversation between him and the memory of the world. He does not speak aloud now, but the quiet is full of understanding, full of acknowledgement. Time has no purchase here. Minutes, hours, or centuries could pass, and it would not matter. The spell that never ends is not constrained by clocks or calendars. It moves in cycles of presence, of attention, of remembrance. Each heartbeat of the wizard aligns with it, reinforcing its rhythm, allowing it to continue simply by existing alongside it. He leans forward slightly, resting his forehead on the smooth surface of the central shard. The warmth of it seeps through his skin, faint yet persistent, carrying with it the weight of countless memories. He feels the lives of brushing against him like whispers, laughter long forgotten, tears once shed in sorrow, quiet sighs of contentment, the fleeting touch of magic at play. Every moment ever lived in this land hums softly in acknowledgement, woven into the unbroken song of the spell. The sky above begins to shift, imperceptibly at first. Faint streaks of gold and rose mingle with silver and violet, colors that have not touched the world in centuries. The stars reflected in the sea of stilled stars shimmer in harmony with the plain below, responding to the rhythm of the spell. The air itself seems to breathe, the smallest gusts carrying warmth and resonance through the wizard's hair and robes. He rises slowly, feeling the pulse beneath his feet extend outward. Each step he takes sends gentle waves across the shards, rippling through the plain like a pebble dropped into a still pond. The motes of light swirl around him, drawn by the momentum of his motion, their soft glow forming arcs and spirals that rise toward the sky. The shards beneath them hum in response, their crystalline surfaces refracting the light into delicate, ever-changing patterns. He walks toward the horizon, where the faint glow of the distant sea mingles with the emerging light of the sky. Every motion feels deliberate, though there is no urgency. He is a witness, a caretaker, a quiet participant in the song of the world. The spell that never ends moves through him, and through him it spreads further, touching the remnants of Ooze forests, towers, and valleys, brushing the last echoes of magic into gentle motion. With each step, he whispers softly, not in command, but in acknowledgement. I see you. I remember you. You endure. The words are carried by the light, drifting into the shards, across the plain, and out to the frozen sea. The fragments of spells, the echoes of old enchantments, the hum of existence itself, all respond in quiet harmony. They do not fade. They shimmer, persistent and patient, alive in their own way. He pauses at the edge of the plain where the shards meet the smooth frost of the distant sea. The reflection of the stars dances across the frozen surface, and he feels the immense depth of it, the unbroken history of everything that has existed, and everything that will continue to exist, if only remembered. He kneels once more, touching the ice, feeling its faint pulse beneath his fingertips. The shard in his hand hums softly, resonating with the heartbeat of the sea and the rhythm of the spell. He lets himself lean back, lying down gently upon the glowing shards. The motes of light drift lazily around him, brushing his robes, threading through his hair, settling over his face like a gentle veil. The shards beneath him hum in quiet support, and the spell continues, infinite in its patient song. He closes his eyes, feeling a calm unlike any he has known in centuries. There is no loneliness here, no sorrow, only the steady, quiet presence of remembrance and continuity. As he drifts, the light of the plain mingles with the faint glow of the horizon and the distant stars. The spell that never ends pulses softly, carrying with it the echoes of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. The world breathes in gentle rhythm, and for the first time in countless ages, he feels a profound peace. He understands now that magic is not a force to control, but a song to witness, a river to follow, a quiet pulse that endures through time itself. He lets the hum wash over him, each vibration a tender lullaby, each shimmer of light a reminder that nothing ever truly fades. Every memory, every spell, every whispered hope joins the song, carried forward in the quiet devotion of one who remembers. He is no longer the last wizard in loneliness. He is part of an endless conversation between the world and itself, a witness to its infinite grace. As the night deepens and the first hints of imagined dawn stir faintly on the horizon, the wizard closes his eyes completely. The shards beneath him glow softly. The motes of light drift in endless arcs, and the spell continues its patient, infinite weaving. The sea of stilled stars reflects the sky, the shards, and the soft glow of the horizon, becoming one with the song that stretches across all things. He feels the pulse of the spell resonate through his bones, through his breath, and through the quiet air around him. The world is alive in its own gentle way, and he is part of it, carrying it forward, a single thread in the eternal fabric of memory and magic. And as his breathing slows, as the shards hum their soft lullaby, and the motes drift like gentle snow across the plain, he whispers softly, almost to himself, "Sleep well, Lou. Sleep well, and remember. Good night."